Okey doke. I'm live. I do see Gato is here. Hey, what's going on, Gato? Howdy. Howdy to you. I'm just going to hold off there before I delve in. I see you're already anxious to get on the abortion issue. Oh, yeah. These third rail topics, aren't they fun to cover? Well, actually, you know what? Tell you the truth, they are, especially and particularly if you're willing to bring some nuance, right? Rather than just this versus that, us versus them. Got to bring a little bit more to the table than that, right? And that's what I plan on doing, and not just for the abortion debate, which yeah, it's been brought to the front, been brought front and center because of the another leak apparently down in the U.S. Well, I'm pretty sure most of you folks are going to at least be well aware of the leak down there in the U.S. in terms of the abortion thing. Anyways, like I said, I'm just going to hold off here for a second or two, or many of them. See how many people can get through the filters and censorship and suppression. See how many people have it within them to find the way to break through all the censorship. I know it's getting difficult. Well, I gotta say, my last stream, actually one of the main reasons why I haven't really been doing much in terms of stream is because, yeah, like I said, I've never been a fan for working for free. I'll do it if it seems. I'll actually do it if it serves some kind of a purpose. But once again, when you get to the point where was it been? It's been a week. What 110 views? So like I say, I'm just gonna wait and see if anyone actually shows up. If no one shows up, we'll shut this stream off and get out and enjoy the beautiful sunny day. It is a beautiful day out there, actually, and maybe that'll be end up being what I'll end up doing. I guess. Say just give it. I do always give it a few minutes. Actually, let me just make sure that this is actually coming up. Check it out. Yeah, yeah. It's active right now on the old BootTube. Yeah, actually, good quality too. Like it. I like it. I'm liking the good quality. Let's check it out over there on a couple of the other platforms and make sure the quality's good. Let's see here. So, checking on the Odyssey. For those of you who aren't aware, I am over on Odyssey. Actually, get a decent amount of views at this point in time. Probably going to be about half. On the Odyssey. Getting to be almost half of what I get on YouTube. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And yeah, the quality over there on Odyssey. Let me just say hi to everyone here. Let's say hi to everyone. That's funny. Okay. Now, what else do we got to check here? Okay. Oh, yeah, the old Rumble. Let's check out Rumble. Let's get ready to Rumble. Actually, I should keep that Odyssey one open just in case somebody actually decides to comment over there because I don't get to see it. That's the thing. I got to switch back and forth. I got to find a way to integrate all the chats because right now it seems mostly I just get to see. Okay, let's see here. Okay, looking good. Looking good on the Rumble. Well, gall darn, I definitely can't complain about quality, at least yet. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Oh, I gotta go back here. All right then. Alrighty then. Oh yeah, I gotta leave this one open so I can cover. Yeah, this was hilarious. Got lots to cover. So, anyways, let's just get into it, I guess. Right? What the heck? If there's a couple people, there's a couple people. That's better than nobody, I guess. All right, so like I say, let's start on the abortion. So, got those already basically delving into it here. But the topic of abortion in the USA, it is very simple. The economy is shit right now, so the Dems need the women to be outraged to win an election. Well, that was, hell hath no fury, as they say. Right? But it's so funny though, because when you use these things, like this is one of those areas where it's like, okay, well, all the women today, and of course you've probably heard this too, that I bet all the women today who are so pissed off about the fact that Roe v. Wade might be overturned or whatever. But it's funny though, and you've probably heard other people mention this as well, Gato, is all the women today complaining about losing. When they're not even going to lose abortion rights, right? But the pretense of losing them. It's funny how they're all alive today. Right? It's a good thing, I guess, none of their mothers aborted them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here to complain, I guess, right? So I don't know. It is hilarious. What a privilege it must be. Anyways, let's see what else got here. There's a reason why they bring this topic up near Mother's Day and months before the Senate election. The Dems did the same thing with Kavanaugh nomination. Talk about Kavanaugh to win the seat. Yeah, talk about Kavanaugh. I saw while I was scrolling through Twitter today that I think there's a buttload of them protesting at the man's house. Now, if anyone were to do that for any other reason, right? I mean, the whole left-right thing. Could you imagine right-wingers protesting? You know how that would play out, right? But I mean, I don't even really have to point that stuff out. Hypocrisy is the rule of the day. Yeah, I think everyone's celebrating. Yeah, you're probably right about that. That's what I was even mentioning to my wife. Well, we did our thing earlier, but that's the thing. It's like I don't know. Because we were trying to talk about that too. Is well, do people typically? And it was actually my wife that said, well, most people would probably be celebrating, like take them out for breakfast or something, right? Which okay, that might make sense. And then, of course, if you're not doing that, you probably would do something in the evening, like go out have a big dinner, right, or something. So it seemed like in the afternoon. Well, here in New Brunswick, it's 4 o'clock. I figured, 3 o'clock Atlantic time, all right, Eastern time, 2 o'clock. The further you get, you're only around lunchish time. But like you say, who knows? It could very well be that they are enjoying Mother's Day. And if that is the case, then by all means, I cannot begrudge anyone from having a good Mother's Day. So if they are, good for them. And like I say, we'll just move on. I did want to start here, so let's get back. Actually, I'm going to try and see if I can put myself in a different part of the frame here. There's a couple different options I have now on the old StreamYard, so just one sec here. Excusez-moi, share screen. But yeah, good point, Gato. Good point, my friend. Good point. Okay, now how could I switch this up? There we go. So I can actually be down here in the corner and actually let this thing. I think right here. Yeah. Wow, I look really far down the corner there, though, don't I? Let me see. Maybe if I full screen it. Oh, it's because I got the thing scrolling across the bottom. That's what it is. That's what it is. Okay, so I might have to pull that. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Better get making. Okay, let me escape. Exit full screen. And yeah, I'm going to take that thing scrolling across the bottom off. Take the banner, scrolling across the bottom off. Let's see if we can. Like I said, let's switch things up here. Okay, take that off. Yeah, I guess it was taking half of it off, but all right. Go this way now. There we go. There we go. Full screen this bad boy. Aha. Oh, but if I do that, then I can't do the scroll feature. Okay. Oh, wait. No, maybe I can. No, I can't. Okay. So I got to exit the full screen. All right. That's fine. But this is good. This is good. This will work. So anyway, so as you can see, this is an article from the Toronto Sun. And I love how Brian Lilly, shout out to Brian Lilly. I love how he phrased this one, right? Trudeau doesn't really believe people should have a choice in medical decisions. Yes. The stench of hypocrisy. It is strong in this one. The same PM who says he will stand for a woman's right to choose told women who chose not to get vaccinated that they would lose their jobs. Ooh, burn. And that used to be a thing when I was younger. It's a Gen X thing. Burn. Licks. You got to be a Gen Xer, I think, to get that one. But anyways, yeah, great point there, Brian Lilly. This was reported May 4th. May the 4th be with you. 2022. That reminds me of that, though I use that voice. So what was that thing that Alex Jones said before? I am a gorilla. I am a gorilla. Anyways, I'm just going to have fun with things today, right? That's what I'm going to try. So let's just read a little bit more down here. Oh, the outrage. The hell is that? Is that Gretchen? Anyways, there was a sudden outbreak of support for bodily autonomy on Tuesday as Canadian politicians said that medical decisions were up to the individual and government had no role. See what I mean? This is why these people like the Trudeau liberals and these hacks in the media. Yeah, if you lack principles, this is how you come across, right? And it's just pure hypocrisy. Total hypocrites. No, it wasn't a group of Canadian politicians saying that vaccine mandates in this country were wrong. It was Canadians reacting to an American court decision on abortion. And actually, it isn't even the decision. It's a leaked draft. So it could be, but it's just a draft, right? So just want to help clarify. Brian's already doing a good job, but I'm helping you out there, Brian, a little bit. Actually, they were reacting to news that the U.S. Supreme Court might change abortion jurisprudence in the United States. Suddenly, though, the phrase was everywhere with politicians reminding Canadians that women have the right to choose, right? And that's the funny part. Actually, before I get down too far in this, the big point, the big thing to point out, right? The most poignant point to point out would be the simple fact that even if the draft decision comes out, the final decision is exactly and precisely what the draft decision is or suggests, which is that the federal government is no longer going to have anything to do with abortions and they're going to kick it back to the states as a state right. Well, once again, and even the lefties, even some of the Democrats are saying, well, okay, well, that just means that the states, like, so some states, right, like let's say Texas or, some of the more Republican, right, states may very well, make things a little bit more difficult. And some of them might even go crazy one way or the other. That's the thing. I don't pick sides here. So I'm not even suggesting there might not be some Republican-led states who deny abortion at all. And of course, I'm against that. If someone was raped, like a young girl was raped, right, or something like that, or could cause harm to the mother, right? So there are obviously areas in terms of abortion where you can say, okay, I'm not a fan, right, of killing the unborn, but you know what? Sometimes, right, and of course it depends on what stage you're talking about too, right? So there is, I would agree, right? There is a difference between a clump of cells very early on in the development as compared or in contrast to the second or third trimester and such. But once again, there has to be nuance to this conversation. But really, like what I'm trying to point out is not going to eliminate people's ability to get an abortion. Well, some of them, like I say, if you do live in one of those states, and there's 50 states in the United States, okay? In Canada, there's only 10 provinces, and we can travel province to province. It isn't that difficult, well, except for when the government prevents you from doing so, right? But under normal circumstances, it's not that difficult for someone to travel to the next province if you want to get some kind of procedure, such as an abortion. And in the U.S., you have 48 on the mainland. So from one state to the next, you're really not that far away. If you really, really want to get your abortion, right, it's not going to be impossible because there will be states who will allow for abortion, right? So I'm just trying to get that cleared up first and foremost. But anyways, going to continue on just a little bit here. The right to choose is a woman's right and a woman's right alone, Justin Trudeau said, right? Really, unless it's to get a vaccine, then it's like, no, you do what I say, or you lose your job, you lose your career, or maybe even worse, right? Crazy. Oh, here we go. A woman's right to choose is hers alone, said Foreign Minister Melanie Joly, once again, unless, right, vaccine mandate. Ontario's NDP leader, Andrea Horwath, about to kick off the provincial election campaign, went further. We have a right to control our own bodies and to make our own choices about our health. This is not negotiable. Not now, not ever, Horwath said. Once again, all of them, all three of them, pure hypocrites. Anyways, I think we've covered that. I think Brian hammered that point home well enough with me doing a little help on the side, right? But yeah, I think that was a great point. That here you got this massive amount of heightened hypocrisy that's taking place. We already see a lot of it, right? It's already at fervent levels, but this has heightened it to a whole nother level in terms of the amount of hypocrisy. My body, my choice. And I will point out too, for the conservatives who want to eliminate abortion entirely, right? Well, some of you conservatives, just like what was that meme I was sharing the other day, right? Conservatives have spent the last 2 years saying, my body, my choice. Well, I'm going to point out your hypocrisy as well, right? I'm an equal opportunist libertarian, right? I don't fit on either side of that left-right spectrum, so I don't mind pointing out the hypocrisy on either side. But yes, there has to be nuance to this. And no, it doesn't mean that, all of a sudden now what? It's going to be the new phase of paranoia that's going to be interjected into the discourse in society. What, climate change isn't enough, right? The COVID last 2 years, that wasn't enough. There's a complete meltdown and destruction of the economy that's basically being propped up and sustained by central banks and arbitrarily printing the money, which is destroying our purchasing power to the point where gas, even in a place like New Brunswick, where I'm literally, folks, going to be, by the way the crow flies, not even 2 hours away from one of the largest refineries. Actually, I think the Irving Oil Refinery might very well be the largest refinery in the goddamn country, right? And it's not hard to get yourself some oil and gas in this country. Well, it wouldn't be if it wasn't for the fact that the Trudeau Liberals, all these people that have been busy shutting down all these resource or potential resource extraction. But think about what they're doing here. But anyways, I'm going to move on, like I say. So we're showed that one. So that's obviously as it pertains to abortion. Let's move on to the next one. This one's going to be a CBC article, right? So you kind of getting the hit on where that's going to go, right? Listen to this. Of course. What would the CBC be if they didn't bring identity politics to the forefront? Everything. It's always about identity politics, right? So this one here, and I mean, so racist. You're so racist. World. Minority women have most to lose if U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, analysis shows. Low-income women will likely also face increased challenges in accessing abortion services, advocates say. This is a report by the Associated Press. Okay, so here we go. Minority women will have the most to lose if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns abortion rights, according to data analyzed by the Associated Press. So I guess what they're saying is it's the minority, people of minority or women, I should say, minority women, who are the ones that are killing the most babies, right? Having the most abortions. Well, why would that be? Why would it be broken down to actual someone based on their skin color? Why is it skin color affecting whether they have their child or not? Of course, socioeconomic status does play a role in that. But once again, there's lots of poor people in all different skin colors. Go to some rural ridings in, whether you're talking Canada, the US, right? and where there's a lot of white people, and you'll see a lot of poor white people, right? But apparently it doesn't affect them, right? Like I say, but the CBC, like I say, they are opportunists and they will take advantage of any time to interject some kind of bias or division among us, right? Minority women will have the most to lose. Okay. A leaked draft Supreme Court opinion suggests the court's conservative majority is poised to overturn the landmark 1973 decision legalizing abortion. The draft decision is not yet final, but sent shockwaves through the U.S. after it was leaked to the public. Overturning the Roe v. Wade decision would give states authority to decide abortion legality. Roughly half of them, largely in the U.S. South and Midwest, are likely to quickly ban abortion. Already, Black or Hispanic women living in conservative states that already limit access to abortion are far more likely than a white woman to have an abortion. First of all, isn't it wild that there are actually people, and I would imagine some of these people get paid really good money, to just sit and track the color and the race of people? Like, that alone to me is like, why? But anyways, let's get down a little more into this. If the Supreme Court allows states to further restrict or even ban abortions, minority women who already face limited access to health care will bear the brunt of it, according to the Associated Press analysis. In Mississippi, people of color comprise 44% of the population, but 81% of women receiving abortions, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, which tracks health statistics. In Texas, they form 59% of the population and 74% of those receiving abortions. The number in Alabama are 35% and 69%. In Louisiana, minorities represent 42% of the population, according to the state health department, and about 72% of those receiving abortions. So, to me, whether you're talking about whether these numbers, how they hold up and stuff, but it tells me that the CBC is once again basically emphasizing that race matters in terms of abortion. I personally, I don't think race should matter at all, but the folks at the CBC do. Anyways, this article, I'm just going to move on. Actually, wasn't really much to it other than, like I say, playing up the race card, which is something that CBC tends to do quite a lot. Now this is the one here, and this is the hilarious part. Well, not hilarious, but let me just bring this one up. So, you already seen how overwhelmed, right? Which doesn't take much. We've seen how low the bar is in terms of what it'll take to overwhelm the healthcare system in this country. It's been in our face and blatantly obvious for the last 2 years, right? And definitely a major contributing factor to a lot of those deaths that took place, for sure. That's a certainty. No one should be doubtful of that. They even admit as much, right? But here you got, look at this. Let me make sure that's actually pulled up there. Yeah. Here, look at this, though. Canada would provide abortions to Americans if Roe v. Wade overturned, Karina Gold. The Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development said she is concerned about Canadian women who access abortion in the U.S. So this is a repost of a Washington Post article by Miriam Berger. But just like I said, so they're saying, oh yeah, come to Canada. Meanwhile, some of these centers where you could get these abortions at basically push back and are saying, listen, we're already overwhelmed. I mean, that's the thing in Canada. There is no restrictions. There are no restrictions on abortion. You can have an abortion in Canada at any point in time during your pregnancy. So I would imagine, and yeah, there's a lot of Canadian women who get abortions as well. So, obviously, it's all filled up from what they're saying. There's already probably backlogs, I would imagine, as with most aspects of our healthcare system. But yet, here's this Trudeau liberal virtue signal. Oh, yeah, just come on up here. Just come on up here, even though when you get up here, probably won't have any facilities for you. But hey, I'm going to virtue signal anyways, right? Like, these people are just that's all they care about. Nothing about what the substance underneath, nothing about principles, nothing that actually, shows how you get from A to B, just constant virtue signaling, pretending, right? Pretending that they're holier than thou or benevolent, which, as we know, I mean, come on up here, we'll kill your babies for you. I guess, that could come across in maybe some way as benevolent. But for someone like myself, comes across as a little bit harsh, a little rude, little vile, actually, in my opinion. If Roe v. Wade were overturned, Americans could continue to receive abortions in Canada, Karina Gold, the country's Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development, said Tuesday. She said such a decision would affect people on both sides of the border. First of all, they don't have to come here. And nor will, I would imagine, most of them ever come. Why would you? Anyways, right? Anyways, U.S. Supreme Court could be poised to overturn the 19th. So actually, I'm not going to bother reading too much more in this article. Like I say, we'll just kind of deal with these things, the most important aspects of the stories, and then just kind of move on, because I do have a lot that I'm going to try to cover here. So let me close actually these ones up that I've already covered. Now, I do like this article out of Reason. Let me show you this one. Okay. As it pertains to abortion. Now, Reason, for you folks that don't know, is an American publication, basically an American libertarian publication. So let's just start at the top here. Pro-life libertarians can cautiously cheer the end of Roe. For libertarians who see unborn babies as innocent, rights-bearing individuals, reducing the number of lives ended by abortion brings us closer to our credo. So this was reported by Liz Wolfe, May 6, 2022. Libertarianism's proponents have long held conflicting opinions when weighing the limits of unborn babies' rights to life against the limits of pregnant women's rights to bodily autonomy and self-determination. It is a difficult topic. It's a difficult topic. It's such an unsettled topic that Reason devoted a whole magazine issue to abortion all the way back in 1978. One's capacity for reasoning cannot be held as a standard for personhood, argued the writer Karl Plock, because any attempt to classify human beings as persons and others, the format protected by the non-aggression principle and the latter, fair game, is doomed to failure. Such distinctions making it Pandora's box of social and ethical ills. The only safe bet, he concluded, is to accord every member of our madcap race the status of person, no matter what his stage of life and development. Plock's moral reasoning was seemingly out of step with the Libertarian Party platform of the time, which advocates for the repeal of all laws restricting voluntary birth control or the right of the woman to make a personal moral choice regarding the termination of pregnancy. In the years since, the LP has embraced a less sweeping stance, recognizing that abortion is a sensitive issue and that people can hold good faith views on all sides, which is true. We believe that government should be kept out of the matter, leaving the question to each person for their conscientious consideration. Though less vociferous a defense of abortion rights, the newer plank might also be more reflective of libertarian sentiment. Survey data on libertarians is hard to come by, but a 2008 survey found that 1/3 of libertarians are pro-life. A 2013 Public Religion Research Institute report, meanwhile, found that 37% of libertarians oppose making abortion access more difficult. Libertarians who consider themselves pro-life tend to hold a wide array of public policy beliefs and views on how to best learn from the past evils of other types of prohibition. For those pro-life libertarians, and I count myself among them, the repeal of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey would be worth celebrating. Such a decision would not end abortion, but it would almost certainly reduce the number of abortions performed annually in the United States. That's something pro-life libertarians can cautiously cheer. In Roe and Casey, the court guaranteed a woman's right to abortion and sought to minimize the undue burdens that might obstruct them. Overturning those decisions would not result in national abortion prohibition. Instead, it would return the issue to state legislatures. The result would be a state-by-state patchwork of abortion law. Restrictions passed in some places would likely result in fewer abortions overall, though the size of the effect would depend on the precise nature of the legal patchwork. Under the assumption that 22 states will ban abortion if Roe is overturned, for example, Middlebury College economist Caitlin Knowles-Myers estimates that 14% fewer abortions would be performed each year. Well, this is the beautiful thing about taking it back to the states and giving all, not just the 48 mainland states, but Hawaii and Alaska, the ability to have their own policy to have their own laws as it pertains to abortion that is genuine. That is the marketplace of ideas, right? And think about it. A one size fits all approach, and which is, I suspect, why the Supreme Court justices are revisiting Roe v. Wade all these many decades later, is because that one size fits all approach has not satisfied anyone, especially, and then particularly those who are pro-life or even some of the pro-choice people, right? So once again, by putting it back into the state's hands and having 50 different examples of how that will be interpreted, or how many different examples there will be, the wide-ranging examples of what it will be to get an abortion, will mean that the rest of us can look and see, well, what we deem ethical and moral. Because that's the thing, we're never going to get to the point where we all agree on everything. That is, I think we should recognize that's abundantly clear at this point. So having 50 different experiments and 50 different states trying their own methods in terms of dealing with this abortion debate is much, much better, and gives people genuine options. Options are important. The left, they don't like options. They are just as tyrannical as the right wingers can be in terms of it's my way or the highway. And we've seen, because they're the ones who have been assuming these positions of power authority, especially not just in politics and the media, but in the deep state, in the bureaucracy. Well, we see how that's played out. And it's not just in terms of the abortion issue, but many other issues as well. This one size fits all approach, not just abortion, but it's a detriment in many other areas in our life as well. But anyways, I think this is a great article, and I definitely recommend, if you want to check out Reason Magazine, subscribe to their publication, or if not, just like I say, all these articles will be down in the description of the stream, and read it in its entirety, because I think it's very, very articulate and well-rounded piece. The kind of stuff you're not going to get from anyone in the establishment media, right? Anyway, so that's kind of the bulk. Yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the abortion thing, and then I'm just going to move on. But anyway, let me just check into the comments and see if we got a few other people who've joined us. Okay, let me just see. Okay, here we got. If you say it is okay for rape victims to abort their babies, all you end up with are rape stats that are through the roof. Everyone who wants an abortion will pretend they were raped. That's possible too, but once again, there's no clear-cut answer on, will people lie? Will people deceive? Well, once again, if that's the case, that's why I suggest what the Supreme Court's doing is actually more prudent than anything that I could even think of at the moment. Is, yes, hand this off to the states, have the 50 different experiments taking place, and then, like I say, you'll see which one will work out, which state ends up with, the most moral and ethical society, people who are actually, maybe more children are surviving, right? Who knows how these will play out? We'll find out, though. With the experiment, we will actually find out. But thanks for pointing that out there, Gato. A right to choose a woman's right alone. It takes two to make a baby. That child belongs as much to the man as it belongs to the woman. Well, that's the thing. You're absolutely right in the area that men, obviously, it does take two, right? Yeah. Yeah, women can't get women pregnant. No. It takes a man for that. So yes, we're both in agreement there. But I will say, as a man, that yes, I should have some. Well, definitely, I should have some say in the matter, to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, does my choice, right? Even though I contributed to that, to having that or impregnating that woman, does my choice, does my wish, do my wants, do my need, does it override, once again, that woman's right to bodily autonomy? I don't know. Once again, that's the area where each and every case, this is why you can't have a one size fits all. Each and every example of these situations, right, would be, I would imagine, hopefully brought before, whether it's a court or some kind of arbiter or some intervener, or someone to kind of figure out what's best for each particular individual or situation. Because once again, if you're the guy, because there's too many ways you can put this. If you're the guy that raped her, do you really have much say in the matter then, right? That changes the dynamics of the conversation, doesn't it? It does indeed. So this is once again one of those areas where it's much better, much wiser to have a multitude of experiments and ways and methods and how this plays out rather than a one size fits all top down approach from the federal government. So I get you. I get you. MSM Canada is discussed. I definitely agree with you there, Les Charat. I agree. It's yeah, they do a great disservice for the Canadian people. Hey, how are you? Funny how Trudeau was raised as a Catholic. Obviously, he doesn't practice it at all for his stance on abortion. Yeah, exactly. Hey, what's going on, Liquid Gal? Thank you for joining the stream. Appreciate that. Does anyone have a copy of the oath that Trudeau swore to uphold when he was sworn as PM? Is violating the oath a criminal offense or just reason to demand? Well, this is the thing, Les Charat. It depends on really at the end of the day when you're talking about government edicts or laws. It really is. You know, the whole eye, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Well, when it comes governments and laws, it's all in the interpretation of the person that's going to interpret the law, right? Because we've seen, we've seen laws get interpreted to mean the direct opposite of what they were actually intended to. So that's basically an impossible question to answer. And I wish I could, but no can do. To know if your comment's been removed in live chat, reload the page. To know if your comment's been removed in live chat. Yeah, well, one thing I will say, Sina Alegria, I do not, unless something's happened outside of my control. Can I delete? I don't even know if I can, but even if I don't ever remove anyone's comments. Why would I? I don't care. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I do have moderators. You know, a couple moderators. I don't know if they're in the chat right now, but that have taken down a couple things before. But usually it's only if you're, personally attacking someone or like dox them, doing things that, would definitely be considered, not cool. Okay. Tried to put 2 more comments on public banking before it was moved in chat. Are you on the YouTube chat? Let me see here. Just trying to scroll down to on the old YouTube here, see if the chats. Okay. I do see. Well, I did give Gato moderator status, so I hope, I'm not sure what's going on here, but I do hope that you are not removing comments, Gato, needlessly. Because as you know, YouTube removes comments. YouTube removes comments. Not sure. I am not sure. Gato says he didn't remove any comments, so I'm not sure what's going on, Sina Alegria, because I haven't, and as far as I can see, Gato's the only one who's got moderator status that's currently in the chat, and he said he didn't. So if they are being deleted, I do apologize. I do apologize for that. Okay, so let's move on. Anyways, let's move on here. Where were we at? Yes. Okay, let's bring this up because this is the area. So now we're into the banking side of things. The banking, which is the next area or subject matter we're going to be covering. So I'm not sure if you folks are aware of this or not. Yeah, that Emergency Act. Well, it might have been revoked, but some of the features of it are permanent. And in this particular example, you're talking about as it pertains to crowdfunding platforms. So this is in CBC News Politics. Crowdfunding platforms now required to report transactions after truck convoy protests. Government says crowdfunding platforms are an emergency risk for terrorist financing. I mean, just think about how much is wrong with that rhetoric already, right? But I mean, it is the CBC. It is Canada's, state funded. Well, we're forced to fund it. It's so funny because it's state funded. Well, the state is nothing, right? And we're forced to pay for this propagandist arm of the Liberal government. But anyways, let's just move on. So this is being reported by Elizabeth Thompson, of course, part of the establishment, right? May 4th, 2022. Canada has become one of the first countries in the world to require online crowdfunding platforms to report to its anti-money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog. Government officials told a special committee examining the truck convoy protest and the steps the government took to end it. Finance Department officials said new regulations went into effect last week, adding crowdfunding platforms and some payment processing companies to the list of companies obliged to report large or suspicious transactions to the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center, Canada's financial intelligence unit. Barry McKillop, Deputy Director of Intelligence for FinTrack, said the regulations close the gap that could be exploited. Certainly, I do believe that having them as subject to the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, Terrorist Financing Act would at the very least act as a deterrent to anyone who might want to use a crowdfunding platform to advance nefarious activities. McKillop told MPs and senators on the committee set up to examine the government's use of the Emergency Act. So first of all, I mean, if you were a terrorist, like, come the fuck on. Like, let's fucking be fucking real here. And could somebody that's sitting in these goddamn fucking during these question periods and shit, yeah, I can't watch that stuff. It's just so infuriating to watch it. Could someone ask a fucking decent question for once? Like something like, why in the fuck would a terrorist or these, if people have this, they want to do something nefarious or overthrow a government, why in the flippity fuck would anyone do it on a crowdfunding platform where they publicly list everybody, the donors, and how much they're donating? Don't you think they do it, in a little bit more of an actual nefarious way where they're fucking hiding what they're doing? Why would they do that out in public, you morons? Like, this shit is just so infuriating. But fucking this idiot in the CBC, this fucking moron will report on that. And like I say, when they're typing this shit out, like nothing in your head's like, oh, this sounds so beyond fucking stupid. Are we all kids here that don't know how to think at all? Actually, sorry, that's an insult to kids, because actually some kids know how to think much better than these fucking morons. Sorry, folks. I get frustrated when I see such stupidity. Just how can these people, like, to me, it's like, are you fucking adults? Are you fucking real? Are we really dealing with adults? Or is this all fake? Somebody pinch me, man, because it doesn't seem real. Julian Brazeau, Director General of the Financial sorry, I was leaning off the side. Julian Brazeau, Director General of the Finance Department's Financial Crimes and Security Division, said to his knowledge, Canada is the first country to require crowdfunding platforms to report transactions to a body like FinTrack. Yay! We're number one in terms of authoritarianism, and not just of going in and stealing people's monies, freezing their fucking bank accounts, right? Pure dictatorship, but now being able to track them. Oh, Lord forbid. And that's the other thing too. This is just an admission that you're a slave, a subject, and a serf, and the central planners plan to keep you that way for at least for as long as you live. So, like I say, and these people are supporting and applauding that. The move means that some large donations, over 10,000 to Canadian fundraiser campaigns hosted by online crowdfunding campaigns like GoFundMe or Give, Send, Go, or which the platform thinks may be suspicious, could now be reported to FinTrack and then potentially be flagged to police. So they started with the 10,000, but then it says, or that it could just be suspicious, right? GoFundMe, which hosted the initial multi-million-dollar crowdfunding campaign for the Ottawa truck convoy protest, said it believes responsible action is core to social fundraising and it will follow the new regulations. GoFundMe will continue to collaborate and cooperate as new regulations are put in place, said spokesperson Megan Weltman. So all that tells me, well, let's move on to the Give, Send, Go, which raised millions for the convoy protest after GoFundMe shut down the fundraising because it feared it might violate its term of service, has not yet responded to questions from CBC News. So Give, Send, Go, and as we know, right, they even pushed back against that stuff. But GoFundMe, they're basically admitting that they're in the back pocket, right? They have the same ideological, or at least the people who run that thing have the same ideological perspective as the ruling establishment. So Why in the hell, knowing that, right, if you're talking about, ooh, what, the far right, ooh, the scary, scary white middle-aged men, or that Trudeau took their fucking livelihoods away, destroyed their ability to drive truck, trust me, I know all of that stuff, right? But, yeah, they're going to what? You think they're going to use these? But anyways, like I say, pure insane. But yeah, so there's that, folks. It's a permanent feature now. It's a permanent feature that you will be tracked by the government, right? If you're banking, not just banking, but like I say, donations, they're going to be tracking your money. Government going to be tracking your money, right? Right now, cash, really hard for the government to track the cash, but hey, they're working hard to bring about digital currencies, right? Central bank digital currencies. Well, think of how much easier that would be then. That's a credit score just like that. Matter of fact, this right here. How is this not part of a credit score? How is this not basically how it plays out in China? Imagine being in China living under their social credit system. Ooh, if you do anything against the government, protest, say anything, donate to a rally or the convoy for freedom and all that. Look at that. Oh, well, that's the thing. At least in China, you just apparently, well, I don't know it as well as the people in China, but they're so you'll lose your score will go down. Well, in Canada, yeah, they stepped it up, probably even superior to what they do in China, to the point where, yeah, not only is your social credit score going down, but yeah, they're going to go in, track you, and maybe they'll just take the money arbitrarily, like they did to the truckers, and your property too, like they did to the truckers, right? Like, think about what the government did to the people who are doing nothing more than peacefully protesting the arbitrary edicts, the mandates that force them to lose their jobs, their occupation, their livelihood. Think about that, folks. Think about what it means. And it was like I say, this will be placed in the description of the video as well. And this part is kind of a two thing. So I'm going to start with the article, and then I've got a Facebook page open where this central banker guy, and actually, believe it or not, I'm actually going to believe with the central banker only on one point, and then I'm going to push back big time. But listen to this. Because yeah, I heard Polyev say it too, right? And it's, I don't know, I think that's a little bit of hyperbolic, a little bit hyperbole being tossed around here, right? But anyway, so let me bring this up. There we go. Okay, so here we go, folks. Former Bank of Canada governor slams Poilievre's assertion central bank is financially illiterate. This was reported by Sarah Turnbull, CTV News, May the 6th, 2022. So yeah, like, first of all, I have no idea Poilievre, other than, maybe it's just, hey, we all make mistakes. Look at me especially when you're doing things on the fly live. Yeah, you make all kinds of mistakes, not grammar, but when I say I'll pronounce something the wrong way or say something, then I'll correct myself after. That's what it is when you're trying to articulate your thoughts in real time, translating into speech. That's not, mistakes do happen. So that's probably, I would imagine, why. But yeah, I would definitely agree that no, these central banksters, these central bank governors, this former central bank governor, yeah, no, they're not financially illiterate. They're Keynesians and they're collectivists, but they're not idiots. They know exactly what they're doing. And they'll even tell you if you just listen, which is what we're going to do now. So let me just bring this off and put this up. And if you listen closely, like I say, you'll hear they know exactly what they're doing. So I got this one on my Next Gen News and Views Facebook page. Let me make sure that pulled up here. Yeah, it sure did. Now, of course, I'm going to have to be able to get the volume. I have to turn this volume up, actually, here, and probably turn this around. All right, you ready for this, folks? Listen up.
To be blunt, that's blunt. Really? Yeah, absolutely. Poilievre says the bank is financially illiterate. It's been so bad. Well, that's bullshit. To be blunt, that's blunt. Really? Yeah, absolutely. You're insulted by that. Yes, I'm very insulted by that. And why? Why? Because they understand what's going on. They made a judgment call, right, which I think was 100% right. Right. And would have been claimed by people like Polyev to be absolutely crazy in the spring of 21, in the spring of 20, but it was that judgment call in the spring of 20 that saved us from a real depression coming out of the pandemic. Interesting.
So before I continue with this, so think about it. This is the exact same excuse, right? Oh, we had to do it. Remember the financial crisis? Well, a lot of you in Canada probably don't, although you folks that watch me do, but yeah, and the fact that the banks were all bailed out, you know, that housing market that's keeping all the young people out of their ability to get their foothold in the market, all that sustaining, all that propping up of all the terrible central planning and all the terrible economic fallout that was a result of that. Now, for someone like this person, so what he's saying is, ooh, we staved off a depression. See, that's for someone like him. Now look at him, look at his age, look at his position, and what he's doing, he's projecting is, yes, just like with the financial crisis and the bank bailouts, yeah, it protected a lot of crony corporations, protected big government, protected like a lot of these, you know, underfunded pension funds, right? The banksters, the central planners. Oh yeah, right? And the housing market too. I mean, think about a lot of people living on these proverbial gold mines, and they're not gold mines. But yes, oh yes, you sustained all of that, right? But this depression you're talking about, it would have affected him and his ilk. For the rest of us, we would have actually seen major benefits, right? That's the thing. It all comes down to, at the end of the day, perspective. And the perspective of these central planners, of these Keynesians, of these collectivists is, oh, it was all done. Your sacrifice, my sacrifice, all these high prices that you were paying, the fact that you can barely afford to put fucking gas in your car anymore, right? Oh, it's all your sacrifices, all that theft, all that inflation, right? Which is, yeah, hashtag inflation is theft, just like hashtag taxation is flat. All that destruction of the economy and the small businesses, all that, all the lockdowns, the whole thing, right? Ooh, it was your sacrifice, not his. None of the central planners sacrificed one fucking thing because they're still doing well, right? But they were scared that their future, right, was potentially something might have been affected. So they were willing to sacrifice you. They were willing to sacrifice me. They were willing to sacrifice our kids and our grandkids for their concept of the greater good. It's their greater good, not yours and not mine. Let's listen a little more.
Again, Mr. Polyever says that we've got to take back our money. He tells us we've got to take back our money supply, and we've got to also, he's talking about crypto being able to opt out of inflation. What do you make about take back our money supply and opting out of inflation? Well, I have no idea what he's talking about, and neither does he in that regard.
So this is a central banker, right, saying that he has no idea what Polyev is talking about when Polyev is saying, you know, cryptocurrencies are a hedge against inflation. You know, even if this old fuck truly and genuinely has no idea about cryptocurrencies in terms of being a hedge against inflation, he's old enough, and I guarantee you, if Evan was smart enough to ask him, do you know what gold does? Gold is used for the same purposes, right? Are you aware that a lot of people use gold as a hedge against inflation? And look, it's worked out really, really well for those who have made that decision, right? And he would have to admit it. Gold, as we've seen, the price has skyrocketed over the decades, while central bankers and governments have been devaluing and depreciating the purchasing power of that bullshit fiat currency that we use every day, that paper, that actually plastic, funny money that we use here in Canada. So he obviously knows, right? Was he never heard of the gold standard? Never heard of Nixon? Is this guy that, because if he is, what the fuck is he doing as a central banker if he's that clueless? In reality, no. He might not know much about cryptocurrency. Well, I mean, look at the man, right? Look at the man. He doesn't look like someone that's on top of cryptocurrencies and what they do in terms of hedging against inflation. But to pretend or to suggest and sit there, all, I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, actually, when I listen to Pierre, it actually does sound like he knows what he's talking about. It's quite easy when someone is knowledgeable to understand when someone else who as well is saying the same thing. It's easy to tell if the words they're using sounds like, yeah, you know what you're talking about. Or is he just guessing, right? But this person here, once again, this is a central banker. And of course he's going to say that, right? Right? It's in his best interest because that Ponzi scheme, the fiat currency, it benefits him and his ilk. So of course he's going to continue to say stuff like that. Anyways, let me just finish this last little bit here.
On the crypto issue, he's just wrong. He's just wrong. Because the issue of rising prices rising prices that you have to cope with out of your income is fundamentally at the moment a structural one. That we have limitations.
You hear that? It's a structural one. The guy doesn't even, you can tell, right? You don't have to be a psychologist or anyone that studies the brain and what are some of these people that study body movements and you don't even need any of that. You don't need any skill to figure that this guy's lying through his fucking teeth. Listen to him. Anyway, let me I kind of forgot what I was going to get to here. Just one sec here.
Out of your income is fundamentally at the moment a structural one.
It's a structural issue. All right, who created the fucking structures in terms of the currency and the monetary system in this country? Somebody? Anybody? Class? Okay. Oh, I see you raise your hand. Yeah. Ew. Central banks? You win a gold star. 100% correct. And who created the central bank? Oh, government. What is the bank again? What is the central bank again? Oh, in Canada, it's called what's it called? The Bank of Canada. The Canadian, it's an act of legislation. The Bank of Canada it's an entity that was created solely as a consequence of government legislation. In other words, government creates the central bank, and the central bank, once again, helps prop up governments. It's Keynesianism. All you have to do is go all the way back and just start learning about John Maynard Keynes, the things he said. In the long run, we're all dead, right? Sacrificing for the greater good, right? It doesn't matter to these people because to them, their concept of how this should play out is, it is that entitled mentality. That is the entitled mentality. Of course. Look, we propped up our system that we structured the way it was. And when it was about to collapse, well, we had to recapitalize this failing structure that think about it, it failed for a reason. And all these people did is rather than allow the market to correct and weed out all the nastiness, the economic malfeasance, all the terrible practices that have taken place, rather than allow the market to correct for that, because that's what would have happened, whether it's the financial crisis, right? Actually, you go back to the dot-com bubble, then there was the financial crisis, 2008, and then, of course, come on. All these different examples, and to the latest one being the last 2 years under COVID and the hundreds of billions of dollars that the Canadian government printed and the trillions that the United States, right? So think about it. All you would have had to do is let the market correct. Because what the market does beautifully, folks, is it shakes out all the bad investments, all the bad actors, right? It makes them have to be accountable for what they did. Whereas the rest of us, if you've been doing the right thing, you would have actually been rewarded, not punished. But see, from his perspective, he don't give a shit about your perspective. He only thinks about it from his perspective. Talk about selfish, right? But yeah, the structural part is the central bank.
We have limitations on supply, in part because of war, in part because of COVID.
First thing he said is we have limit on supply, in part because of war. We all know that the war just started in February, and we know the supply shortage started happening way before that. And we all know that the price and inflation took off long before that. But that's the thing. He's going to try and COVID, the pandemic, A fucking virus? Like I say, I've never seen a virus yet. If somebody can just capture just just give me a couple 2-second snippet of a video where a virus did all these things. Because last time I checked, all the virus does is get inside of our body and do a bunch of stuff internally, maybe to our body, which our own body actually fights back and kicks its ass for the most part. But it doesn't, viruses don't understand economics, right? Viruses don't set policy. Viruses don't lock people down. Viruses don't create mandates, right? Viruses don't find people, early on or whatever for taking their dog for a walk in the park, right? Viruses don't do any of that stuff. Who does that? Big government and their central bankers. Well, the central bankers do the monetary side of things to paint over or cover up all the mess for the government. But the government, everything he's talking about, government did that, government did that, government did that. Government and central planners. And this guy's a central planner. So, of course, he's going to want to misdirect and point the fingers elsewhere. Do you think he wants to admit that he helped contribute to the mess? Of course not.
Or because of ongoing features of the economy of we're all getting older. The labor force is not growing as fast.
We're all getting older and the labor force thing. Well, that's the thing. If you older fuckers, didn't treat young kids so terrible and economically enslave them for so many decades, they might be in a much better position. I think about the millennials today. Oh, some of these old fuckers, well, we just don't have enough kids to fill up the labor market. And basically what they're saying is to take care of these old decrepit fucks when they finally do retire and go off into the sunset, right? It's like, well, you fuckers, by keeping this goddamn housing bubble sustained that you've been pumping up for the last, I don't know how many decades in this country. Well, you're the one that's causing a lot of these younger Canadians not to be able to even afford to have kids, right? Or at least to believe that they can't afford to do so. You're the very fucking people that have placed the younger generations in the position today. And yet you're going to go to what? Blame them. And once again, use more central planning, more things to prop these fucks up. They're not doing anything to help the young people, right? If this old fuck cared about the young people in the labor market, well, first of all, big government bringing in 400,000 plus immigrants a year, right? To keep wages suppressed. And I mean, they've already been suppressed for 4+ decades now, but keeping wages suppressed, that's detrimental to those young people, right? Causing massive amounts of inflation, which makes everything more expensive for these younger people to do or to buy. Yeah, that's very detrimental to the younger people. Oh, and like I say, and the housing market and not even being able to afford to own a home or somewhere where they could raise their children. Like, because we're talking, whether you're talking about own a home. When I say own a home, you could own a home, but I could even be just talking about renting an apartment. But I got to tell you, even as someone who I've been on I've been a renter, I've rented my house. I've been on all sides of that equation. I got to tell you, paying rent just plain ass fucking sucks if you do it for too long of a time. Because it's basically like you're giving it away. You're just pissing away. I know when I was up in Ontario, after I lost my license from impaired back in 2012 for having a few beer on my four-wheeler. Yeah, me and my wife were paying $1,000 a month. We were up there for 7 years. 7 times 12 is 84. So 84 months, and our rent, well, it increased each one, but it was at least around $1,000 a month, even when we first started. So think about that. That's $84,000 that we gave. Now, we did have a roof over it, so it's not like it was all in vain. But after it was all said and done, what did we have to show for it? Yes, we had a roof over our head for that time. But then, just like that, it was gone. It was gone. Whereas if I had spent that $84,000 in my own home, maybe to do some repairs, some upgrades and stuff, it would have been much, much more benefit, not just for the near term, but for the long term as well. Or maybe to help give that money to lend or to help other people out in their situation. Or yeah, maybe even to give it to my kids or something. I mean, it would have been a whole lot better up, but no. So this constant, and that's the thing. A lot of these older people who just want to be rent seekers, it's a weird thing I've seen in the older generations, particularly the boomer. And I'm not saying all boomers, so don't get pissed off at me, but I got to tell you, they seem to love eating their fucking young. What the hell is up with these people? And like he's even saying, we got to be able to keep this bubble going, man. Right? That's basically all he's saying. We got to keep this bubble going no matter how many people gets harmed along the way. Right? Because just like John Maynard Keynes himself said, in the end, we're all dead, right? Think about these people. Think about the shit they espouse. Terrible, terrible. I think it's just disgusting, the fact that people are willing to do that kind of stuff. But hey, this is the world we live in, folks. And for some strange reason, Canadians, other than the few that watch my video and a few other people or whatever, but I guess overall there might be a few thousand of us in this country, but the rest of them seemingly are just on board with just let her go. Just let her rip. Keep it going the way it is. So obviously either they're benefiting from it or it hasn't affected them very much in their life, has it? Right? Think about that. Think about what that means for how many people in this country actually rely on big government, that they're willing to allow this kind of stuff to take place and cause so much harm to so many other people. But it's like, I'm benefit from it. So, right? Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that certainly creates a sense of unity, doesn't it? Right. Anyway, so let me get back to a couple more things. Because like I say, whether he's lying or not, that's the thing. Oh, he's just bullshitting, man. He's just full of shit. Well, he's saying things that, people need to fucking hear. So that's the way I look at it. That's the way I look at it. I'm glad that there's at least someone who's got access to the bully pulpit, right? Because the CBC and CTV and Global, they'll all pay attention to this guy because he's part of the establishment, right? Well, at least he's someone that's willing to say the thing that needs to be said. And Canadians are actually going to hear it. Sure, like once again, I have nothing personal against Maxime Bernier. I do have some things against some of the people who are part of the PBC, right? Who like I say, I won't even bring that into it. But anyways, I'll let that the bygone be bygone. But sorry, Maxime Bernier and the PBC, look at the media, right? They've already shown they're not going to give you the time of day. Not for a moment. And like I say, what kind of success has Maxime and the PBC achieved? Zero. He even lost his own seat. So yes, we can all use our feels. Oh, but he's saying the right thing. And yeah, he is. But in terms of a political solution, it's just wishful thinking. I mean, I seen an actual example of someone that had posted on Twitter. Someone actually took the effort. I was like, good for them, because that's the kind of thing that I would normally do. It's like, I'm not putting that effort in for stuff much anymore. Like I say, if people start caring, maybe I will. But anyways, basically showed all the writings, and I forget how many writings, like maybe 40 writings or somewhere around there, and I'm not even a big fan of saying, oh, they've split the vote, but 100% legitimately, the PBC. Now, of course, that would have just meant that O'Toole would have been in charge. So am I really upset? No, I actually, I'm not even upset, right, about the fact that the PPC split the vote, because I didn't want O'Toole. It was just Trudeau, but an older version of him from the Conservative Party. Right? So it's like, whatever. Might as well take the original one. You're going to get the same basic policies, right? So at least Trudeau, one thing you can say about him is at least he come up with the original ideas of economic needs, enslaving countless Canadians in the younger generations, and all the things he's done terrible to this country, locking them down. But hey, I'll agree that I didn't care if O'Toole, but once again, Poilievre, if he's even remotely going to do the things that he's saying on the stage, yeah, it probably would not be a good idea for the PPC to split the vote again and cause the Liberals, because we don't even know when that vote might ever take place, because the Trudeau Liberals and Jagmeet Singh's NDP, they've basically joined forces to the point where maybe we'll never have another election. I joke about that, kind of. Anyways, so yeah, I got this pulled up, right? Okay, yeah. So here's another article as it pertains to Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre promises to quash Bank of Canada foray into digital currency. I mean, what a beautiful thing. I'm so glad that some Canadians are hearing this, right? Even from the CBC, even the lefties or people that are CBC loyalists, they're going to be reading this stuff, right? Probably not much more beyond the headline, although some of them will for sure. But anyways, Conservative leadership contender wants to audit central bank. It's reported by John Paul Tasker. Another one of those CBC. April 28, 2022. Conservative leadership contender Pierre Poilievre promised Thursday he'd spike the Bank of Canada's proposal to offer a digital currency, saying the sort of financial instrument should be left to the private sector, right? Beautiful. Poilievre has emerged as a fierce, separate the economy and the state. And I trust you. That separating church and state, that was definitely an important thing that took place back in the past in history. But the next the best step we can take, the greatest step we can take going forward is the separation of the state. I don't expect the state to cease in people's mind anytime soon, right? That's a long-term project. But at the very least, we got to separate the state and economics. If we can get the state to no longer have control over our worth, over what we produce and provide in society and the value of such, or how much we can retain or save some of that or exchange that value, if we can get government the ability to completely manipulate, control, and dictate every aspect of our economic and financial lives, we're not just better off economically, but because the state uses that economic prosperity that they steal from us, they use that to enslave us. So not only is it a beneficial to us in the immediate term, in the long term, they will no longer have the instrument to enslave us. That is, like I say, that is one of the last instruments that the state has left at their disposal, is the power of the purse, is the power to control the economy. That is the power and control that they have over us. And if we can remove that from their hands, then the sky truly is the limit. Freedom may very well, genuine liberty may very well get a second chance, get a reprieve, and hopefully we can keep it that way long into the future. Poilievre has emerged as a fierce critic of Canada's central bank. He's tried to link decades-high inflation to its COVID-era policy of quantitative easing, and recently slammed the institution as financially illiterate. Now, that quantitative easing, that's just a fancy word for saying printing a buttload of money or buying up treasury bonds, right? Which is basically the same thing. Offloading, like assuming debts to offload to future taxpayers or future citizens at some point in time. That's all it is, folks. Economically, it's just, there's different methods that they use to economically enslave you, whether they want to do it in the here and now, or in the immediate future, or in the far off future, in the long term. There's just different methods and instruments that they use to do so. Actually, let me just check and make sure I haven't. Maybe, is this too loud? Turn it down a bit, because I know I'm a little bit on a tear today, but I'm getting a little wound up. Everything looks good so far, though. Okay. But Poilievre said that a government led by him would extend the Auditor General's authority to include the Bank of Canada and push for a review of its pandemic policies. Oh, audit the Fed, right? Audit the Fed. This man's ripping a page right out of Ron Paul's playbook, right? Ron Paul, audit the Fed, end the Fed. Yeah. Yes. So this is Poilievre. What this is, and I think this is why the establishment is so pissed off at Poilievre and so much target him, is because Poilievre, now he's a conservative, right? But in reality, a lot of these things, what he's talking about, a lot of these positions and stances that he's taken are very much libertarian positions and stances. And that, my friends, is what's scaring the living daylights out of the establishment. They're scared to death because libertarians, as you know, we're a special breed of people. You can't bully us. You can't intimidate us. We're wise, intelligent. We know what's going on, right? We actually have genuine principles, right? We don't need rulers of any kind. We're basically, like I say, we are the antithesis to the statists. The statists are scared to death of us. And think about it. Even though they have all that access to not just the might of the state in terms of economics, but in terms of the actual physical might of all their enforcers, right? And the deep state, the bureaucracy, they've got all that. They've got the education systems in their back pocket, right? They've got the bankers in their back pocket. They've got crony corporate Canada in their back pocket. They, like I say, they've got their tentacles in every aspect of our social and economic lives where they have so much control. And yet what they don't have control of is our minds, is the libertarians' independent critical thinking mind. And it drives them nuts that there are people like us out here. Now, we're a small, very small fringe minority of people with unacceptable views, right? But like I say, We have the power of truth and competence and the willing and ability to lead by example, which is something that all of these people are lacking entirely. So yes, we're a serious threat. And I'm glad that they're finally recognizing it. Just read a little bit more here, folks. Justin Trudeau. Oh, yeah. And about the pandemic policies. Oh, I'd love to see that some of the auditing for that, right? Justin Trudeau has threatened the Bank of Canada's independence with $500 billion of deficits that required the central bank to print money and cause inflation, Poilievre said. That's just inflation, he said, using his gag name for inflation rates under the Liberal government. I will end it by restoring central bank independence, mandating an independent audit of all the money printing, and stopping the risky central bank digital currency. Here's another one. Or here's another important aspect of that. State-backed crypto akin to nationalization, Poilievre campaign says. Poilievre is a big proponent of cryptocurrencies. I like them too. Such as Bitcoin. He has suggested that Canadians can opt out of inflation by pouring money into these investments, and he doesn't want the Bank of Canada to offer a competing product. That's a weird way to phrase it, CBC. But anyways, yeah. He wants you to be able to protect and retain the purchasing power and the value of that money that you worked hard for. Good for him. And yes, cryptocurrencies have definitely done that, right? And that's the thing when people say, oh yeah, but look at Bitcoin, it's down. Okay, if you do a snapshot on that, right, I can see that. But once again, stretch that out and you got to understand Bitcoin, just like gold, what the genuine intended purpose for it, right? Ever heard the term HODL? It's not meant for your daily transactions. There's other cryptocurrencies for that. Anyway, so let's just get a little bit further down. Like I say, this is the beautiful thing, whether you agree with them or not. This is just beautiful that people in the CBC or people that read the CBC, I mean, even people that as they're writing, think about it. Now they're actually talking about things that libertarians have been talking about for a long time. It's actually going to, some of the libertarian points, talking points, and very important things as it pertains to economics, right, are finally being talked about by someone who actually has access to the bully pulpit, has access to the media, has access to the CBC, where they're actually writing articles like this. That's important, folks. Information is important. And this spreading of information, even though the CBC is not doing it to help matters, it is happening, right? Bitcoin has had a volatile run in recent months as central banks have increased interest rates to tackle pandemic-driven inflation, making speculative investments less attractive. The price of Bitcoin has dropped some 40% since November 2021 high. So they've raised the central bank rate, what, a 0.5 percentage point. Overall, was it like maybe 3/4? Not even 1%. So yeah, that's nowhere. I mean, trust me, people are not fleeing, right? Fleeing cryptocurrencies, the kind of people that would typically be buying cryptocurrencies. Listen, what it is there's been a substantial portion of that actually that people have cashed out. Now that has played an effect. But in terms of people fleeing cryptocurrencies, nah, anything but, right? Central banks around the world are concerned that the explosive growth of Bitcoin could destabilize the existing financial system. That's good. That's good. Yeah, you should be worried. In this environment, the Bank of Canada has been studying the viability of creating its own digital currency. Digital token similar to cryptocurrency that would be pegged to the value of the Canadian dollar, which means constantly going down, right? Whereas Bitcoin, no, it's not constantly going down. Sure, there will be fluctuation. It hasn't stabilized. It is not the world's reserve currency, nor is it pegged to any world reserve currency currently, right? So yes, it's still finding its footing, but it's definitely not got the track record, not even close, right? Not even one millionth of the track record of fiat currencies in terms of the constant devaluation and depreciation, right? No, not even close. But yeah, so the government wants to create their own. So think about what a government would do when everything is just in the digital realm. Think about the kind of monetary manipulation and control governments would have under that kind of scenario. Yeah. So I'm definitely on board and 100% agree with Poilievre in terms of his stance on that. And here's another thing for all you folks. Now, once again, he could be bullshitting. Yeah, sure, he could be lying, right? I mean, he is a politician after all, so it's not like I don't think politicians will, tell a tall tale or two. But this is really nice to see, right? For a lot of you people out there, right? Talking about that. And I've talked about it myself, right? So if you're no fan of the World Economic Forum and these central planners, right? These globalists, well, hey, once again, Polyev is out there preaching to the choir and hopefully bringing in new recruits, right? By saying the things that a lot of us have been trying to say for quite a while. So this from True North by Noah Jarvis, May 4th, 2022. Pierre Poilievre says he and his cabinet would boycott World Economic Forum. Conservative Party of Canada CBC leadership candidate Pierre Poilievre and his wife, Anna, answered some tough questions on the campaign trail this week about pharmaceutical companies and globalist organizations. Nice. Flanked by ERA at a campaign stop in Ontario, Pierre promised that his government would boycott the World Economic Forum after being approached by a handful of people asking about any possible connection to the organization. Pierre used the opportunity to deny affiliation with the group while taking a shot at People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier. I'm against the World Economic Forum, Pierre said. Unlike Maxime Bernier, I've never been to the Davos conference that the World Economic Forum puts on. And he'll have to explain why he went there and what he was doing there. I didn't even know that Maxime went to the World Economic Forum. So, yeah, I would suggest for those PBC people that I still have, mostly on Twitter now, most ignore me, but they'll, if they see a tweet or something, right? Or if I'm saying something bad about their political master, it's the thing. The BBC they've basically morphed into, anyways. But yeah, they're constantly pointing out, Pierre Poilievre and all these other, or Candace Bergen or anyone else in these parties. Oh, they're just a bunch of World Economic Forum stooges. Look, they were over there. Look, their names are on this or whatever. It's like, well, you might want to hold your own leader to the same kind of standard that you're trying to hold everyone else to. That's kind of the point of principle, right? Which is why, to me, the PBC has degraded just in such a short time. And it's such a shame, too, because the PBC actually had, well, when I was a founding member, so I obviously believed in having an alternative in this country. And I still firmly believe in having an alternative voice or political party, right, that is outside of the establishment. I still would like to see that happen, but there would be a tremendous amount of things that would have to happen or change within the PBC. And even then, I don't know. Just too many bad things have happened. And like I say, the fact that the PBC, anyways, I'm not going to get into the personal aspect of it between my thing with the PBC, but I just don't have no faith or trust in these people because I've seen that it seems that they're just spewing the same kind of rhetoric. And once again, I don't know them from a hole in the ground. I base my decisions and my opinions or perspective on what I see and can perceive or how they treat me. Outside of that, there's nothing else I can say. But anyways, promise that his government would boycott. Okay, I'm against the World Economic Forum, Pierre said. But I did not go to that, and I would not, nor will any of my ministers. Have you spoken to Justin Trudeau about the amount of money he's making on these vaccines that he's forcing on us? One woman asked. I'm not accusing you, but I have heard that you have shares in that company. Anna asked if she could answer and took the woman by the hand. Can I look you in the eye when I say that? Can I hold you by the hand and say that? I do not, darling. I really do not. And I am honest. I am promising you. Pierre's assertion was disputed by an onlooker who mentioned that WEF's website contained a photo and web page of him. Anna shot back saying, his name was on the website and we do not know why. We asked them why they put his name there. The only answer we got is that they published an article that he had published, but he has no affiliation. Pierre has also denied any relationship with WF in an interview with True North's Andrew Lawton in March. I've never been to Davos, Pierre said. I've never been part of the organization, and I don't agree with its publicly stated policy objectives. So I mean, whether he's being completely forthright and honest or not, at least he's pushing back against the World Economic Forum, which is kind of important, right? And I mean, what else more do you need? I mean, the guy's he's getting bullseyes continuously on the things he's saying out in the campaign trail. I mean, what is more appealing, right? Even if you're a fan of the PPC, one of the biggest applause lines that Maxime Bernier or PPC candidates could receive was by saying that they were willing to defund the CBC. And Pierre Poilievre is willing to do the same. Which, yeah, that too would help us out tremendously, right? So this is by Post Millennial, May 6, 2022. Poilievre says he will defund CBC, take shots at Canadian liberal media and conservative leadership debate. I would defund the CBC. I would do so. I would defund the CBC to save over $1 billion, and I would repeal the Internet Censorship Bill C-11, said Poilievre on Thursday. So once again, I mean, come on, that's what we want, right? For those of us who care about freedom and liberty, these are the things that we want to see take place, right? Now, I hope he's not bullshitting, right? Because that's the thing. That's the thing. The Conservative Party, they've tried being centrist. They've tried moving further left so that they're basically liberal light. And it looks like now they're at least willing to give Poilievre someone who's willing to go the exact opposite direction, right? So this is a really, really important aspect for Canada, the entire country going forward. Which trajectory, which direction are we going to head, right? If Poilievre does get the leadership, win the leadership race of the CPC, and he does become the man to lead Canada in at least this direction, how far he can take us, I don't know. But at the very least, if that's the general vicinity or direction he wants to take Canada, which is more towards individual freedom, less collectivism, less central planning, then once again, we Canadians, whether you're a supporter of PPC, whether you're even a Libertarian Party supporter, I'm a big fan of the Libertarian Party. Matter of fact, if I had my choice, it'd be a Libertarian Party of Canada from coast to coast, right, governing this country. But wishful thinking is not going to help matters. We have a whole lot of Canadians in this country who are not going to vote for the Libertarian Party. The overwhelming majority, they're not going to vote for the Libertarian Party. They're not going to vote for the PPC. They're not, or some of these other new upcoming or new upstarts in terms of political parties that are challenging status quo. Not to suggest that, they may very well, they may get their day. Who knows? But like I say, in the near term, it's going to be one of the establishment parties. Well, unless something really drastically changes or happens, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, because if something really, 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 really bad happens, I mean, you might get enough Canadians on board with okay, we got to really change things up. That could happen, but the chances are pretty much slim to none, folks. Pretty much slim to none. But I mean, the fact, like I say, I'll just move on from that, because I mean, we've all heard plenty of time. But how great is it, the fact that he's even out there saying the same thing that we've been saying for a long time, which is, you got to defund the CBC. Really important. And these ideas need to get out there so that more and more Canadians are seeing them, not just functioning echo chambers. Like I say, we need, unfortunately, as much as I'm not a fan of these established media outlets, that's where most Canadians, or at least a substantial portion of Canadians, the older ones in particular, get their news and information. So it's good that they're starting to get this kind of news and information, right? Now, we're going to move on here to close that one. Okay. Oh, yeah, here was another one. So I'm going to read this, actually. I could have covered it myself, but I think this person did a pretty decent job. So give credit where credit's due. And it's actually someone from, was it Global News? Globe and Mail. Ethan Liu. It's an opinion piece. See, this is what I mean, right? So you do get those, right? You get the odds submitted opinion piece that's not representative of the establishment, of the editorial board of that particular organization, where you will get a little bit, not very much, but the odd pushback against the establishment. And here we're going to get a little bit of it here. So this is an opinion. Poilievre has a point on central bank digital currencies. This was a special of the Globe and Mail, published May 2nd, 2022, like I say, by Ethan Liu. Ethan Liu is an author of Once a Bitcoin Miner, Scandal and Turmoil in the Cryptocurrency Wild West. Pierre Poilievre says a lot of things, and sometimes Mr. Poilievre has a point. Last week, the conservative leadership candidate said that if he becomes prime minister, he would ban the Bank of Canada from issuing a central bank digital currency. It's not entirely a new idea. A Republican legislator has made the same pitch in the United States. A central bank digital currency, which the Liberal government said in its recent budget it would consider, has grave implications for privacy. No shit. It is true that In an increasingly cashless economy, our payments are already tracked by all manner of private companies, such as banks and credit card companies. But everyday transactions are not directly tracked by the government or law enforcement. Well, except from that article we were reading earlier, right? If they want to see data that, they would, if they want to see that data, they would need to approach these private companies with a good reason, such as a warrant or a court order. A central bank digital currency, on the other hand, cuts out the bank and credit card companies. It's essentially an electronic payment system directly controlled by the government. You got that, right? The Bank of Canada would no doubt like that because it can thus implement its monetary policy, usually a blunt instrument, in a more micro-targeting way. Who knows? Maybe that's a good thing for fighting the inflation the federal institution has been trying so hard to tame. But having all our financial data directly in the hands of the government is a frightening thought. The leader in the world of central bank digital currencies is China, which already has a working product and used by some of the population. Why has China been so eager to develop one? Critics of its human rights records have long said that a digital currency would enable even greater surveillance and control. Canada, of course, is not China, although Trudeau and his band of merry minions in the Liberal Party seem to all be fans of the China basic dictatorship and that particular model. The Bank of Canada has said that a core feature of its digital currency would be privacy for its users. One of the bank's deputy governors, Timothy Lane, said in 2001 that, in fact, the federal institution is a better custodian for people's information than private companies because it has no commercial motivation to harvest data. Fair point. Oh, yeah, fair point. Okay. Anyways, let me continue on. But the word commercial seems to be carrying a lot of weight in that line. Look what Mr. Lane also said. He said the bank, in operating its digital currency, sees a need in defending against criminal uses. He also qualified the degree of privacy that the digital currency should provide. Some privacy, right? Really important distinctions, right? This brings to mind what the Singaporean government has said about its COVID-19 contact tracing app, which it made everyone use during the worst wave of the pandemic. The government has also said a lot about how important privacy was. The government has also said a lot about how important privacy was. Later, a minister revealed in Parliament that police use the data to solve a non-COVID-19 crime. Amid the backlash, the government came up with rules on how the contact tracing data would be used, only for serious offenses, or so the government says, right? Once you set the precedent, that slippery slide, it's there, it's waiting to pretend that government's like, come on. When the fuck have governments never used power or control when they take it, right? Never happened, folks. So, of course, they're going to use it for that purpose. Whoever gets to define serious offenses and what's stopping the government from simply changing its mind. Yeah, exactly. What's stopping it? Nothing. Once they have control, what is stopping it? That's the thing. Once you place that kind of power and control in the hands of the government, I'm sure when people were thinking up back in the day when coming up with a central bank in Canada or the U.S., I'm sure they thought, we'll be able to restrain it, right? Just like the Constitution. Oh, we'll just write words down and that'll restrain and restrict it. But you know what? People will find ways around that, right? That's the thing. You cannot give anyone that pretense of authority or power. That's what the market does. It prevents anyone from amassing or accumulating that kind of power because nobody believes that any particular business in a free market has the authority to control and manipulate their value or their worth, right? Of course not. It's a good thing Singapore is now winding down the use of contact tracing app, but look how quickly the government had shifted the premise from the previous idea that contact tracing data would be used only for COVID control. So quickly a form of mass surveillance got enshrined into law and normalized. How does that relate to a central bank digital currency? It's basically induced demand, like how more lanes on a highway encourage people to drive more. Like in Parkinson's law, when the amount of work always expands to fill the time allocated to it. Or like what Denzel Washington's character says in The Magnificent Seven. Man carries a gun, he tends to use it. It's like with the rampant cyberspying disclosed by the U.S. whistleblower Edward Snowden. Simply having more data available encourages governments to want to peek at it. In China, where the central bank digital currency is starting to take hold, some people already have social credit ratings indicating they're trustworthiness, and tracking by facial recognition and artificial intelligence is rampant. Last Thursday, the Chinese Twitter equivalent Weibo told users their IP addresses would be automatically published. Mr. Poilievre's aversion to central bank digital currency, whatever the source of it, should be taken seriously. For when considering a central bank digital currency, there's a lot more than monetary policy or financial technology that needs to be taken into account. Our government should look at the trends elsewhere and ask itself, is this the sort of society we want to become? So beautiful, like I say, great article. And this gentleman did a great service in terms of pointing out the kind of concerns that I even had myself. So like I said, nothing really further to add to this other than the fact that, yes, you cannot allow governments to have this much control, right? I mean, like I say, they've already got a tremendous amount of control. This just puts it on a level that no human being in history has ever had to deal with, or that we can even properly articulate or comprehend. It's even difficult to actually perceive properly just how invasive and controlling this would be. Okay, so there's that. We got that one. Okay, yeah, and so where are we at here now? Let me actually bring the banner up. I'll bring the banner up. So yeah, so we're into the banking and censorship. It's kind of going over each other. It's going to kind of lap a little bit here, actually. Try to get through these a little quicker here. Share screen. All right. So now we're into, well, censorship is a big part of it. So, and that's the thing, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, that can go into the banking or censorship aspect of things, right? So here we go once again. This one here, of course, another CBC article. Anti-hate group calls for regulator to police social media platforms. Right? And look who they're showing. Oh, the scary far right, right? Facebook and Twitter monitored Ottawa convoy. Oh, look at that. They're talking about the convoy, but then they're showing the Lemieux clan. And like, it's just, once again, the media, the established media, it's just, they just want to paint anyone who they perceive as conservative or libertarian or just anyone who's in the status quo, the establishment, right? They just want to target or paint us all with the broad brush of we're just the terrible people in society, right? The worst of the worst, apparently. Anti-hate group calls for regulator to police social media platforms. So this is being reported by Elizabeth Thompson, April 26, 2022. The federal government should appoint a regulator with the power to force social media companies to disclose information to help fight far-right extremism, which basically is anyone that won't bow to the whims of the Trudeau liberal regime, as we've seen. Far-right extremism, an anti-hate group told MPs Tuesday. Evan Bolgard, executive director of the Canada Anti-Hate Network, said an ombudsman could put more pressure on tech companies to do more to reduce online harms. What are these online harms? I've never heard them properly described. Maybe we'll get it in this next little paragraph, right? The basic idea is that you have an ombudsman, a regulator, a well-resourced one with investigatory powers so they can kick down the door of Facebook and take their hard drives. Balgold told members of the Congress Public Safety and National Security Committee studying ideologically motivated violent extremism. Like, think about the rhetoric. Kick down the door of Facebook and take their hard drives. Sound very authoritarian to me. I'm being a bit hyperbolic. I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but we know that these platforms hide data from us and lie to journalists. So we do need broad investigatory powers to investigate them. Like I say, this is just like this kind of stuff alone should be enough to disturb most Canadians. But weirdly enough, I've been reporting on things this disturbing or even more disturbing for the last, decade or more, and even just on my YouTube video alone, like basically 1,300 videos, and it over all those years, it still hasn't gotten Canadians to the point where they should be overly concerned. A small amount of us, but not enough. Not enough. Balgord said the regulators should be empowered to issue recommendations about the algorithms social media platforms use to engage with their audiences and to take cases to court. He said platforms should face the threat of fines if they refuse to follow the regulators' recommendations. Balgord was one of the 3 experts who testified before the committee on Tuesday. All 3 described the rise of far-right extremism in Canada enabled by social media. Once again, they keep saying far-right extremism and harms, but I'm not hearing one example, not one fucking example of these harms or this extremism. What does it mean? What people saying words you don't like? That's really what we're talking about at the end of the day, really, isn't it? Is people are saying things that these fucks don't like and they want to come down heavy-handed on them, right? Think about it. These are tyrants. Think about what they would do if they had that power. Think about what the government, because the government is filled with these people. Why do you think the CBC and the government are willing to bring these people in, right? And then parrot the kind of rhetoric in these articles, right? Because they're all for it. They're all, right? They're all speaking out the same side. Like they're all parroting each other. They all have the same ideologically driven motives, right? Is they want to maintain the power of not just the purse, but of total control. Collectivists want to have total control over every aspect of your social and economic life. And people's willingness and ability to speak freely, it really hinders that, right? Because like I say, the truth and the power to speak truth or to hold power to account or to point out that the king is not wearing any clothes, right? Or the emperor is not wearing any clothes. Oh, you can't have that. You can't have that. You don't want people to see or perceive the real world for what it is. No, you want to keep them, indoctrinated into the cult of conformity, into the mindset of the subjective status. Bolgard drew a direct line from an anti-Muslim group through Yellow Vest Canada protest to the convoy protest that paralyzed downtown Ottawa for 3 weeks and blocked border crossings. He pointed to the January 6, 2021 mob assault on the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. as an example of where such movements can lead, right? They're not all racist. They're not all violent, said Balgard. Not all people on January 6 were either. There were groups in those mids that decided that they were going to try to do a coup, and they swept up a lot of other people there. A coup. Like this guy, think about the amount of weapons and the militias that are actual real in the United States. There's hundreds of millions of weapons as if they really wanted to do a coup and take over, right, the Capitol in Washington, D.C. If that was their intended goal or purpose, boy, they sure showed up fucking unarmed or ill-equipped and ill-armed for the task at hand. Right? No one actually believes that it was an insurrection or an attempt to violently overthrow the government. It was people pissed off about the fact that there was a lot of fucking fuckery going on with the election down there, right? And some of that truth has actually come to light regarding that fuckery as it pertains to the vote. So, there were some people, but to suggest, look at how they're trying to tie all this in, right? This is being done for a reason. This is to place a target on you or I so that they can hopefully get enough people, these mindless order followers, the bureaucracy, the deep state, or just the typical dumbed down, indoctrinated masses to want to do us grave harm or to put duct tape over our mouths or silence and suppress our voices. That's the whole point of these articles, right? These are people who they themselves would never step up to my doorstep or anywhere on my fucking property or anywhere even in public and suggest that they want to put duct tape in my. They wouldn't say that to my face. Yeah, I want to be able to shut you the hell up, Bennett. I want to make it so that you never get to say what you want to say on social media. They would never have the courage or the audacity to say that to my fucking face, ever. But they're more than willing to use the full force and might of the state and a bunch of them mindless order followers to do it for them. Anyways, folks, I'll pull this one, or actually, I think I already did pull that one off, right? So, actually, let me get back. I'm going to look at a few of the comments. I do got some more stuff to cover, so please be patient, folks. I know we're at 1:45. Actually, no, I'm going to keep going because I'm already, wow, I can't believe I'm already an hour and 45 minutes into this. Whoa. Sorry, folks, but like I say, a lot of stuff. I don't do as many live streams. Just not incentivized to do much lately. Like I say, you got to give me, I've got to feel like something. When you go from thousands and thousands of people watching to literally like just barely over 100, yeah, I don't care who you are. Good luck trying to stay ambitious or excited to keep doing these things. And yeah, it's probably done on purpose, but nobody's helping to push back or show otherwise. So whatever, man, it is what it is. I'll tell you, this country will end up, at some point in time, we'll be able to say, well, hey, listen, I tried. I mean, I tried. And, I can't wait for that day to come. It will. Sadly, they're going to have to, apparently Canadians have to go through a whole lot more. Yeah. Anyways, check this out and talk in terms of censorship and surveillance. I could have added surveillance in that because surveillance is another major aspect, not just censorship, but surveillance, right? But anyways, like I say, let me pull this one up. Not sure if you folks are aware of that. I'm sure some of you are. This was disturbing because like this takes things to another whole level as well, right? All right. Headline of the Ottawa Citizen: surveillance aircraft over Ottawa during Freedom Convoy protest operated by Canadian Special Forces, DND confirms. National Defense acknowledged the aircraft was in use by Canadian Special Forces as part of a training mission on February 10th, but stated the flight had nothing to do with the protest. Right? This is reported by David Pugliese, May 3rd, 2022. Canadian Special Forces were operating the mystery aircraft that flew over Ottawa during the so-called, why do you call it the so-called Freedom Convoy? Why is it called the so-called, like that doesn't even make any sense. The so-called, that's what it was, Freedom Convoy. But anyways, you see how that is? Anyway. It's just like I call them so-called experts, I guess. Tit for tat and all, I guess. Protests in late January and February, this newspaper has confirmed. U.S. registered King Air aircraft was airborne over Ottawa on January 28th, January 29th, February 3rd, February 10th, and February 11th, according to data collected by Stefan Watkins, an Ottawa researcher who tracks the movements of vessels and planes. For instance, on February 10th, the aircraft was flying circular patterns over Ottawa before disappearing from publicly available aircraft tracking systems, Watkins said. The flights coincided with the large-scale protests held in downtown Ottawa as part of the Freedom Convoy. Protesters in Ottawa demanded the government remove rules designed to prevent the spread of COVID-19, but other demonstrators also called for the overthrow of the Canadian government. Once again, I mean, just people saying some stupid thing or whatever, as if there was no serious, I mean, they were there for 3 weeks. What were they waiting for? Anyways, media. So, and like I say, remove rules designed to prevent the spread of COVID-19. You see how they're covering that? No, they were protesting the federal government, causing a bunch of Canadian truck drivers who lost their jobs, their livelihoods, and their careers because they wouldn't get the fucking vaccines that have shown and been proven at this point in time that no matter how many you got, 6 months out, it's like you had never had one anyways. Your protection is basically nil to nothing anyway. So it would have been all in vain, wouldn't it? Wouldn't have stopped the spread, would have done a goddamn thing. But all these people were fighting for is their bodily autonomy and their God-given rights to be free from forced subjugation and undergoing a medical intervention that they didn't themselves want or require. That's what it comes down to. National Defense spokesperson Dan Laboutier acknowledged the aircraft was in use by Canadian Special Forces as part of a training mission on February 10th, but he stated the flight had nothing to do with the protest. Right? Information wasn't available from National Defense on who operated the plane on the other dates, but military sources said those flights also involved Canadian Special Forces. Canadian Special Forces are preparing to receive their own King aircraft outfitted with surveillance equipment and have been conducting training leading up to the delivery of those planes. So yeah, this was a U.S. on plane on Canadian soil doing this shit, right? That's already a bit weird, right? But yeah, Canada going to get their own, right, surveillance aircraft. All the easier to spy on and report to big government if you're doing anything that may challenge the status quo, right? Those aircraft, the first of which will be delivered this summer, will give the Canadian military the ability to collect data for missions overseas and at home. The modified small passenger planes are outfitted with surveillance equipment, allowing for the interception of cell phone calls, radio transmissions, and other communications. Electro-optical sensors would also allow crews on board the aircraft to track the movement of individuals and vehicles on the ground, the Canadian military has noted. Canadian Special Forces had access to similar aircraft in Afghanistan to track and target insurgents. Anyways, folks, I think you got pretty much enough information out of that. So that is another area. Like I said, I don't know what's up with Canada, and I don't know what's up with the Canadian people. How are they just sitting back and allowing this to take place? Like I say, even if you're on the government dole, I know it's probably a pretty decent, healthy paycheck, and I know the pension's probably pretty sweet, but is it really worth it? Selling yourself and your entire country out to big government, to collectivism, to authoritarianism for a paycheck? Is it really worth it? I don't know. Something tells me a lot of these people, when you get to that latter stage of your life, that last stage of your life, you're going to live with a lot of regret. Unfortunately, you're going to force a lot of us Canadians who don't support any of this shit to suffer right along with you. Thanks a lot. And then there's this, of course, and I'm sure you folks are well aware of this, but I definitely got to get this included into this live stream. Very disturbing. What? Where did that go? It's canceled. Okay. All right. Committee, share. Okay, there we go. So yeah, and of course we were never made aware of it during the time it was happening, but we're being made aware of it now after the fact. I hope there's a lot of people out there with money, at least enough money to sue the living shit out of these governments for doing this. And I realize that the other taxpayers are paid, but like I said, there has to be something. I'm already forced to pay for a lot of things. If I'm going to be forced to pay for something, it has to be, I'm willing to pay to support, to get government out of the ability to constantly do shit like this, right? This kind of nonsense has to end. So look at this. Ethics Committee. Just checking to make sure it's still there. Ethics Committee says government must tell Canadians it's tracking their movements. This was reported by the Canadian Press staff May 4th. So once again, Sarah Ritchie. So really, if you think about how many of these articles that were just republications, reprints of a Canadian Press article, right? What do you need CTV and CBC? It's just redundant. They're just redundant outlets, using forcing us tax slaves and tax serfs, wage slaves, forcing us to pay to prop these fuckers up to just basically repeat and regurgitate the same thing that's been reported in, like I say, the Canadian Press. Nowhere, like that's why they fit. See, in a private market, they wouldn't survive because you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything unique. You're not contributing to anything other than copy and pasting. Right? Woo! Major contributions. They need massive billets so they can copy and paste and lie to us. Right? Ottawa House of Commons Committee says the federal government needs to tell Canadians it is collecting data about their movements and allow them to opt out of that collection. Gee, you think? Would have been nice. It should have been like how. That's another thing. How's this even allowable. Well, I'll tell you why, because of all the laws that have been passed, and it started under Harper with Bill C-51 and all the crap that he did too, and the banker bailouts. That's the thing with these people that are, the conservative. Your Harper, the one that you love so much, yeah, he did some terrible, terrible things. He set some terrible precedent that the liberals like, woo, thank you very much. We're going to run with that one, right? As the Commons Committee said, the federal government needs to tell. Those are some of the recommendations made by the Ethics Committee, which started looking into the issue back in January after public outcry about the Federal Health Agency's secret collection of data from cell providers during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Public Health Agency of Canada used data from cell towers to track 33 million mobile devices as a way to assess population mobility patterns during pandemic lockdowns, and issued a tender in December to continue tracking location data until May 31st, 2023. So still going on, folks. Still going on. The government is literally tracking your phone, or at least 33. I mean, come on. That's probably how many Canadians have, right? I would suggest, or I would think 33 million of them, right? So the government, even right now, are probably tracking your movements and all that. So, and of course, it's how is this legal? They're the ones that can interpret the laws, right? And who's doing anything about it? Very few. Or even if they do, well, you go and challenge them in court. Well, it'll probably be done long before they ever get to the court and get through the process. Even right now, some of the challenges to the emergency order. The emergency order was already enacted long ago, already caused all the harm and the damage, right, to all the hundreds of Canadians that it did. And even now, are we getting any reprieve? I mean, we're getting some reports that there might be some point in time where it might finally make it through the court, right? But when? When is that going to be? Way, way too late, like usual. I mean, what good are these institutions that are supposed to be there to protect you, but yet they're not doing a damn thing? That's like throwing you a lifeline after you've already jumped off the building and crashed on the ground and killed yourself. And someone comes along a half hour later, it's like, here, let me throw you a lifeline to help you. Too late now. What good is it now, right? The committee said the government should notify people about these programs in a manner that clearly outlines the nature and purpose of the data collection. It's also calling for changes to privacy laws so that de-identified information and aggregate data are considered personal information subject to privacy protections. In a response late Wednesday, PHAC said it maintains the information it received. In a response late Wednesday, PHAC said it maintains the information it received did not meet the definition of personal information and that it is cooperating with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner's investigation, right? So based on what they're interpreting as, hey, they're just collecting a whole bunch of your data. We didn't specifically use it but it's there. You've got it. You've tracked it. You've traced it, right? Is it stored somewhere for you to use at some point in time going forward? Well, we already know based on the Edward Snowden revelations all those years ago, that not only does the government track and trace and collect all your data, but yeah, they store it as well. So even if they're not using it right now for a nefarious purpose, who's to suggest they won't at some point in time in the future, right? PHAC will take into account the recommendations from the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy, and Ethics review of its use of mobility data and its future use in the public health response, the agency spokesperson said in an email. For his part, Privacy Commissioner Daniel Thieren said in a statement Wednesday that he welcomes the report and that the government failed to reassure people that this data collection would respect their privacy. He said the country's privacy laws are in urgent need of modernization and that even socially beneficial users of data are seen as suspect because Canadians have no confidence that our laws will protect them. And you're damn right we don't, for good reason. The proposed changes go beyond just government. The committee says Canada needs to regulate the private sector's ability when it comes to collecting, using, sharing, storing, and destroying mobility data, and the companies need to obtain meaningful consent from. Listen, fuck off, government. We'll deal with the private companies, right? That's the thing. I have the ability to opt out of Facebook. I have the and actually Elon Musk is doing a much better job, right, to bring about freedom of speech and preventing the kind of nastiness and surveillance and spying and manipulation by opening up the algorithm, right? Didn't have to use government at all for it. No government at all. He just had to get a bunch of private sector investors and himself and have the right ideas. And now he's going to hopefully put them into fruition. No government needed or necessary. So fuck off. We don't need no government in Canada. I have more faith and trust in the market, and not even just like I say, not because I think that they're all benevolent, but because they'll do it if it's in their best interest. Simple as that. Simple as that. Right? So we don't need government. What we do need is government to get the hell out of spying on us, being invasive, and surveilling us, and censoring what we say, do, or hear. Theron said it's unrealistic for people to have to give consent for all users of their data, and there should be greater flexibility for organizations to use personal information without consent for responsible innovation and socially benefit purpose. However, this should be done within a legal framework that recognizes privacy as a human right and as an essential element for the exercise of other fundamental rights. Theron said, adding that the Office of the Privacy Commission should have independent oversight of such data collection to ensure. So that's the thing. It's just another government department, and because it's all government, well, look. They had, even right now, there were some privacy rights, but all of that went out the window the minute you invoke an Emergency Act, the likes of what Trudeau, basically, it removes all your rights. It says right in the goddamn thing that your rights are, they've even admitted that they don't acknowledge that your rights are inherent in Canada. Now, in the US, they are. And even at the United Nations, they acknowledge that your rights are inherent and inalienable. But in Canada, no. They think your rights are privileged in this country. And as they've shown, the Trudeau Liberals, that regime showed, they're more than willing to deny your rights when they deem it necessary for their own reasoning, right? And think about the excuses and the reasoning that the Trudeau Liberals have used to invade on our privacy rights and a lot of our other rights as well. So, do I have a whole lot of faith that this government department or some other government department or whatever is going to protect our rights when literally the Constitution, well, the Charter of Rights gives them the excuse or the pretense that they can override them, or at least that's how the Trudeau government interpreted it, right? Now, Brian Peckford is saying otherwise, he's saying it points out in the preamble that the supremacy of the rule of law and God is actually even more important. But once again, look at how the establishment politicians, right? Look at how the Trudeau Liberals, and actually a lot of people even in the NDP and some even in the Conservative Party, are allowing the interpretation, right? That clause somehow gives them the ability to override or just completely ignore our inherent and inalienable rights. So what good is the government going to do when its government is the one? Government's not going to protect your rights when government is literally the entity that control freaks, authoritarians use to deny those rights or to take them away. Anyways, let me close that one up. That's, like I say, another really important thing. So yeah, we're being tracked still, folks. Still to this day, we're being tracked. Okay, so we got that one done. We're getting there, folks. Be patient. We're getting there. We are getting there. What's the next one we got? Oh, this is this is basically along the same lines, but I'm just going to share it real quick here. Real quick. I won't be very long. Okay. So this is a National Post article. Health agency tracked Canadians' trips to liquor stores, pharmacies via phones during pandemic. So this is basically the same thing. And as you can see, another the Canadian press. Look at that. Like I say, it's just copy and paste. The report reveals PHAC was able to view a detailed snapshot of people's behavior, including grocery store visits, gatherings with family and friends, time spent. So think about that. The report reveals PHAC was able to view a detailed snapshot, folks, of people's behavior, including grocery store visits, gatherings with family and friends, and time spent at home and trips. Ottawa, Canadians' movements, including trips to the liquor store and pharmacy, were closely tracked via their mobile phones without their knowledge during the COVID-19 pandemic, a report sent to a parliamentary committee shows. Outbreak intelligence analyst Blue Dot prepared reports using anonymized data for the Public Health Agency of Canada to help understand travel patterns during the pandemic. The federal government provided one of these reports to the House of Commons Ethics Committee as it probed the collection and use of mobile phone data by the Public Health Agency. The report reveals the agency was able to view a detailed snapshot of people's behavior, including visits to the grocery store, gatherings with family and friends, time spent at home and trips to other towns and provinces. MPs on the Ethics Committee expressed surprise at how much detail the report contained, even as all identifying information was stripped out. Right. So, like I say, this obviously this can tell a whole lot. This metadata that we've been talking about for a long time, it paints a very, very clear picture and a high resolution snapshot, as we're seeing in terms of what Canadians are doing. On the individual level, if they're not looking at that particularly, but if the data has the capacity to track 33 million, if they're tracking all these individual phones, then just by natural extension of the fact that you have access to that, can you individualize it? Can you target it? Of course you can. Of course you can. Whether they did or not, well, we just have to rely on what they tell us, right? And because they're so trustworthy, as we know. Not. I just want to, like I say, cover that one. Yeah, and of course, with another area of the censorship, let me get this one up because I've covered this one too, folks. But got to get, like I say, we've got to get this information out. Even YouTube here is now warning Canadians about Bill C-11. So this is from True North by Cosmin de Souza, May 5th, 2022. Cinco de Mayo. YouTube warns Bill C-11 lets feds censor everyday content. So it's not even, to me, it's like, dang, it's not even enacted yet. And I already feel like it is because I tell you, folks, well, like I say, either people just don't like watching my content or I'm heavily, heavily censored. One of the two, because things just don't. I've had this sneaking suspicion for a long, long time. But once again, because that's the thing. I am so against conspiracy theories. I'll even deny a lot of things that really makes a lot of sense, but I'll even deny them, accepting them outright, just because I just don't like going down to these. I don't like going down these conspiracy theory rabbit holes, right? I mean, sometimes I'll engage in a little fun in that, but I don't know. I like to put the responsibility on myself, right? To me, it just seems like a lazy. Let me just say, it seems like a lazy thing for me, anyways. To just say, oh, it's everyone else's fault why my channel gets no right. But I hate that. I'm not a fan of removing that personal responsibility thing from myself. So a lot of times I'll say, well, surely it's got to be censorship. But then on the other hand, I think, yeah, but Bennett, you say some things that are, people don't like to hear what I had to say, right? So is it that they're tuning out because, as with most Canadians, the truth is just too hard to take. And because I don't have a tribe per se, is because, like I say, if the right wingers come and start or support my channel or watch my content, it won't be long before they'll be like, oh man, he's pointing out my faults and failures. I don't like him for that, right? Same with left wingers or most people in this country. So that might be the reasoning behind it too. It's just like, well, we don't want to be around a guy that's constantly, holding up a mirror, not just to himself, but to me as well. I don't want that. I don't want to see that, right? I don't know. Once again, just my speculation. YouTube officials have warned that if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's internet regulation bill goes through, it could give the government unprecedented power over everyday content posted online. According to YouTube Canada's head of government affairs, Jeanette Patel, Bill C-11's wording is so broad that it places home videos within the purview of the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, the CRTC. Despite claims by the Trudeau government that the law would exclude ordinary videos, several experts have blasted the update to the Broadcasting Act as an affront to freedom of expression. Bill C-11 provides the CRTC the discretion to regulate user-generated content, like a fan doing a cover song or someone making cooking videos in their kitchen or doing how to fix a bike videos, said Patel. Wow, right? Imagine how much it would affect a channel like mine. Liberal Minister of Heritage Pablo Rodriguez told the media in February that such content would not be within the CRTC's mandate. Are you saying a politician lied? A liberal politician lied? I can't imagine that. We have been extremely clear. Only platforms have obligations. Users and creators will not be regulated. Platforms are in. user-generated content is out, said department spokeswoman Laura Scafidi. So who do you believe? Who do you believe, right? Last month, Trudeau appointed CRTC Chair Ian Scott claimed that Canadians should have confidence in the organization to regulate the internet. Users of online and social media services expect freedom of expression, and they will continue to enjoy this under the new. Okay, he's a Trudeau. It's a Trudeau appointed chair. So, I mean, once again, put another way, the CRTC issues about 250 broadcasting decisions annually. Not a single one has ever been successfully challenged on the basis that it somehow infringed Canadians' freedom of expression. So the government investigated itself, and the government decided that everything they did was on the up and up. Not a whole lot, unlike the police investigated themselves, and everything that they did was on the up and hello. The Trudeau government has introduced several pieces of legislation to expand government control on the online world, including the so-called online hate bill, C-18. Other social media companies that have criticized the Liberals' regulatory plans include Twitter. A submission from Twitter to the Heritage Ministry that was obtained by an access to information request compared the Liberals' online hate legislation to censorship regimes in authoritarian countries such as North Korea. Yeah, that's pretty scathing, right? The proposal by the government of Canada to allow the Digital Safety Commission to block websites is drastic, wrote Twitter's manager for public policy, Michelle Austin, in September. People around the world have been blocked from accessing Twitter and other services in a similar manner as the one proposed by Canada by multiple authoritarian governments, China, North Korea, and Iran, for example, under the false guise of online safety, impeding people's rights to access information online. Former CRTC Commissioner Timothy Denton, which is someone that's no longer part of it, has a little bit of freedom to speak now, apparently, also likened proposed internet regulations to authoritarian regimes. It is creepily totalitarian, something you might expect out of China or Russia, said Denton in November. So once again, folks, more great reporting. Thank goodness for the folks at True North. And at least some Canadians do watch them. So there's that, right? Although I do highly suspect that if there is a shift, that some of these, I'm getting the suspicion, although it'll be much, much better. But anyways, I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself. So let's get the next one. So we got lots of reports on that, and check this out. So here we're getting to. Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah. So these ones here, I gotta get these. This stream is going to go longer than I was suspecting, but these are really important stories, folks. Like I say, the time might come where I just actually break all these up into snippets. Although, who knows? Anyways, okay. So check this out. This is going to be under the duty defend, obviously, aspect of this. And yeah, I was trying to get, as you can see, the A, B, C, D, E kind of thing. So it was hard to come up with the proper wording for this. So just bear with me here. Anyways, so this too is being reported out of Ottawa Citizen. Canada failed when it trained Ukrainian troops linked to the far right, says Nazi Hunter. The Canadian Forces says it had no obligation to be entirely certain of the backgrounds of those soldiers it trained in Ukraine. This is reported by David Pugliese, April 13th, 2022. A top Nazi hunter and Holocaust scholar says Canada failed when it allowed Ukrainian military personnel connected to far-right groups to receive training as recent as 17 months ago. So yeah, them far-right ultra-nationalists, those Nazis over there in Ukraine, and yeah, they're real. It's a real deal. It's a real thing. A lot of them were trained by Canadians. I mean, actually, if you think about it, makes perfect sense because there's a whole lot of National Socialism. There's a whole lot of people who at least think along the lines of that collective. Now, not the exact same thing, not purely specifically race-based, but definitely have that National Socialist or that Nazi or that fascistic type of fervor about them, right? A top Nazi hunter. Okay, so but the Canadian Forces says it had no obligation to be entirely certain of the backgrounds of those soldiers that trained in Ukraine. Radio Canada reported Monday that Canadian military personnel trained both members of the far-right Azov regiment as well as at least one Ukrainian soldier who sported the crest of the Nazi SS unit from the Second World War. The training took place in November 2020. Efrain Zufran of the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Israel said in an interview with the newspaper that Canada failed to properly monitor its own military training program. The Canadian government didn't do its due diligence, he said. It's the responsibility of the Canadian Defense Ministry to know exactly who they are training. Well, one would think, right? There's no question that there are neo-Nazis in different forms in Ukraine, whether they're in the Azov regiment or other organizations, he added. Defense sources acknowledged the crest worn by the Ukrainian soldier in Canada. Defense sources acknowledged the crest worn by the Ukrainian soldier in Canadian military photos is the insignia of Ukraine's SS unit, which fought for the Nazis. The other photos show Ukrainian troops with insignia linked to the Azov unit. Canadian Forces Captain Veronique Saburin said all Canadian military members training Ukrainian troops were given information to help them recognize badges and insignia associated with right-wing extremists. Ukraine is responsible for vetting its own personnel, she added. So apparently they were even given some training to know what, but it didn't work out very well, apparently. If Canadian soldiers suspect their Ukrainian counterparts or trainees hold racist views or belong to right-wing organizations, then the trainees are removed, Saburin explained. But she added, there is no burden of proof on the CAF to demonstrate this beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So that's what I mean. Think about it. When it comes to government, there's no real rules. There's no rules. How many times we see time and time again? Oh, we just don't have a rule or a policy or a law to prevent it. Sorry, my bad. But for you, oh yeah, if you protest or if you do anything that challenges the status quo, they got a million laws to come down heavy-handed with you. And if they don't, well, they'll just make one up by invoking the Emergencies Act, right? But no, there's nothing to protect you from any of this stuff. No. Oh, my goodness, folks. My goodness. The Canadian military has denied training members. Of course they deny it. The Azov unit, sometimes known as a battalion or a regiment, has been formally incorporated into the Ukrainian military. But its connection, I got to do this again in case I do end up redoing this at some point in time. The Azov unit, sometimes known as a battalion or a regiment, has been formally incorporated into the Ukrainian military. But its connections to the far right have long been recognized. In 2017, Canada's Joint Task Force, Ukraine produced a briefing on the Azov Battalion, acknowledging its links to Nazi ideology. Multiple members of Azov have described themselves as Nazis, the Canadian officers warned in their briefing. In 2018, the U.S. Congress banned the use of U.S. funds to provide arms, training, and other assistance to the Azov Battalion because of its links to the far right and neo-Nazis. The UN and Amnesty International have accused the unit of human rights violations. I mean, I'm just thinking right now, think about, the parents, or I should say at this point, the grandparents, or maybe even great-grandparents of some of the military personnel today who fought in World War I and World War II against the Nazis. Canadians went specifically and purposely, or at least that's what they were told at the time, to fight against authoritarian collectivism, to fight against the Nazis, the fascists. And yet, maybe some of their grandkids or great-grandkids today in the military, or at least people multiple generations, a couple generations removed from them, are now training Nazis in Ukraine. What would those people think if they were alive today? What kind of effect would that have on their mind to think, wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be fighting Nazis? Wasn't that the whole point of why I went and died and didn't get to return to my family, to my loved ones, to my children, to my community? I died for nothing? That's what they would be saying today. I'm not trying to put my words in their mouth, but I'm pretty sure there'll at least be a few of them that would say that, right? Anyways, yeah, I'll pull this article back here too, folks. Actually, let me change up the layout here. Put myself back over here. Pull that. Stop the share there. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Just hold on there, folks. Hold on. Couple more to go. Just a couple more to go. Well, a few more. Okay. Okay, share. Share. Sharing is caring. So here's another one. This one's on the National Post. Incompetence or the realities of war. Turmoil for Canadian-led foreign battalion in Ukraine. So, in addition to the training, folks, yeah, believe me, there's more. There's more. And we're not even just talking about the fact that some people in high positions of the federal government, have very special, close relationships with Ukraine, right? Who even themselves, some of their relatives were Nazi sympathizers, right? Not mentioning any names here, but let's just, like I said, let's just deal with this particular topic or this article here. Incompetence. Okay. Ex-members say the Norman Brigade is badly run and under-equipped, but a well-known Canadian sniper says the unit's leader is a good fighter and warrior. So this is reported by Tom Blackwell, May 6, 2022. A Canadian military veteran who calls himself Rolf says he realized after his first combat experience in Ukraine several weeks ago that he could have died multiple times. Coming under small arms artillery and aerial fire from Russia forces was a living hell, he said. But the Quebec native is now battling a different kind of foe. And he and the Norman Brigade, foreign fighter unit he commands, comes under serious criticism from several of the brigade's former members. Infantry veterans themselves, they allege that the brigade run by Rolf, a nom de guerre he adopted for security reasons, is reckless, has little weaponry or protective equipment for the soldiers he recruits, and no official relationship with Ukrainian forces. So they're doing their thing, right? What? I don't know, mercenaries? Just out there doing their own thing, right? Not even part of the actual Ukrainian military. Rolf is essentially building a private army with volunteers from around the world to defend the village of his Ukrainian wife and children, they charge. He's endangering the lives of unsuspecting young Canadians who just want to go and see combat, says Paul. Yeah, you're not traveling or you're not traveling to a war-torn country like Ukraine just because you want to just take a look-see, right? Like, come on, can you stop with the nonsense? We all know that obviously there are some of the people who join the military, they do so because they like to fuck people up, right? It's the only place where you can go, well, other than the police force, where you can fucking kill people and not have to worry about being charged criminally for it, right? And not just killing folks, we also know some of the other heinous crimes that are committed during times of war, right? An Ottawa-based civil servant who was the brigade's second in command before quitting and joining Ukraine's official International Legion. It's not right. It's completely irresponsible, especially for a person claiming to be a commander. Like other international troops quoted in this story, Paul asked that his full name not be published for security reasons. Rule strongly denies the charges and counters that his critics simply wanted to take over the brigade, possibly for their own personal benefit. Oh, you mean like you? This is not about glory, he says. This is about winning the fight here. And he has at least one prominent defender among foreigners in Ukraine. Retired Canadian Army sniper Wally, also a nom de guerre, says he briefly was part of the brigade before quitting after Rolf suggested they settle their differences by fistfight. But I personally like the NB commander. NB commander. Oh, I see. No, okay, never mind. He said by email, he's a good fighter and warrior. We're all good fighter and warrior. Like, okay, anyways. We're all on the same side against Russians, and that's what matters the most. Regardless of who's right, the dispute suggests foreigners eager to come to Ukraine's defense face not just a brutal adversary, but the chaos and limited resources of a hastily formed network of international combatants. The non-Ukraine troops' unusual role in the war was highlighted last week when fighters from the U.S., Britain, and Denmark were killed in action. Businessman Chris Eklund of Hamilton, Ontario, who set up the Fight for Ukraine.ca organization to support Canadians who take up arms there, said he's recommended that would-be defenders avoid the Norman Brigade for now, citing a huge lack of equipment. Until these things can be rectified, it's probably not a good idea that you apply and head over. Eklund said he's always urged Canadians wishing to battle the Russian invaders to apply to the official International Legion for the territorial defense of Ukraine through the Ukrainian embassy in Ottawa. The Legion says more than 500 Canadians have joined via a system that screens applicants and now rejects those without combat experience. But Eklund said he regularly encounters people with little to no military background who insist on traveling to Ukraine and joining an official foreign fighting force. There's been a lot of people heading over doing things they shouldn't be doing, he said. Daily, I'm basically talking people out of going, which to me is a success. Paul says the Norman Brigade lacks the kind of formal links to the Ukrainian armed forces that Eklund recommends foreigners seek out. Just a handshake agreement with local militias. Rolf responds that the brigade is in fact embedded with a battalion of the volunteer Ukrainian army, works with the country's territorial defense force, and is well known to the defense ministry. Neither the ministry nor the defense attaché at Ukraine's Ottawa embassy responded to requests for comment on the brigade. Does seem to have developed a prominent profile internationally, mainly through a Facebook page complete with fundraising sales of T-shirts and other merchandise. The unit is based in a southeastern Ukrainian municipality relatively close to fierce fighting, but the National Post has agreed not to disclose the exact location for security reasons. Rolf described in the Post how he and other brigade members took part of Ukrainian military operation on March 26, briefly recapturing a village occupied by the Russians. But 5 other former brigade members, men from Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United States, who all say they're combat veterans, each voiced concerns about how the unit was run. Paul, 27, said he knew the commander from his time in the French Foreign Legion and organized recruitment from Canada before traveling to Europe on April 9th with a fellow Legion veteran from BC. Rolf had been at the front for 2 months already, but had done little groundwork for the volunteers. Paul gathered. Veterans, he says, have the kind of combat know-how Kyiv wants, and who came to Ukraine at a great personal expense, often giving up peaceful lives at home. The 2 Canadians joined other Norman Brigade recruits in Poland, and they eventually made their way to the city in southern Ukraine that was to be their train base, shocked by how little any Ukrainian officials seemed to know of the unit. Okay, let me read this part here. At one point, they discovered that Rolf had a tattoo on his hand of a black sun, an occult symbol adopted by German Nazis and sometimes used by the neo-fascist movement, Paul and John recalled. My friend James, who was there, literally spat on the ground in front of him and said, "This is everything our grandfathers fought against in the Second World War." Asked about his ink work, Rolf said he has runic, Scandinavian, and a mix of Indo-European and Japanese tattoos. And he says he came heavily armed to that meeting at the base in case Russian paratroopers launched an attack behind Ukrainian lines, and he met them on the 3-hour drive there. Meanwhile, others left before Paul and John even arrived because of what they called dangerous orders. So anyways, moving on from that one. So like I say, whole lot of, like, you want to talk about some actual, these are people that, you know, that's the thing. How do the Trudeau Liberals, how does the government square this where they're trying to fight and there's nothing that even suggests that there's any dangerous or violent people that they're calling far right, like the trucker protests? No evidence, no examples whatsoever, nothing. And even the stories that they tried to use to paint the convoy protesters as being bad actors, like the fire that happened inside the building or some of these other events that took place, they've all been proven to have nothing to do with the truckers. No truckers were criminally charged or suspected of any criminal activity other than, you know, whatever they were charged with after the Emergency Orders Act, right? But there's nothing to suggest that there was any violence or any of the stuff that's taken place, right? in Ottawa, but yet they're constantly labeled, and the Emergency Act invoked, bank accounts seized. There are people actually still sitting in jail, others who were jailed and imprisoned for a particular time and denied bail and all that stuff. So all that took place for doing nothing more than protesting, while the Trudeau regime and their ministers like Freeland and the likes are supporting people who are actual Nazis, right? And fighting and killing people in a foreign country. Like, how do you square that? Oh, we're against far right. We're against the Nazis in Canada, but we support them in Ukraine. How do you square? How do you as a liberal, how do you as a lefty, right? How do you as someone, if you're a commie or one of these people, how do you support the Trudeau regime when they're literally not just talking out of both sides of the mouth, but supporting far right groups while condemning far right or alleged far right groups, supporting real far right groups, although we get into the left right thing at some other point in time. I'm just going to use their own rhetoric against them right here, because I think you guys know in terms of what I think about the labeling Nazis as far right, right? National Socialists, right? I don't think so. I think they're all leftists. But once again, this is how the media and the establishment like to paint them as far right. And I think we're all starting to see the big picture as to why they did it to the Nazis. They use that term for the Nazis in the past, and why they're using it for the authoritarian collectivists in the here and now. Like I say, the leftists don't want any of that blame for themselves, because that's where all that comes from. Collectivism, authority, that's a lot of the leftist stuff. That's authoritarian. That is nationalism, socialism, communism, right? Different particular models, not exactly the same, not precisely the same, but all different iterations of authoritarian collectivism. Anyways, let me move on. Wait till you folks hear this one. Just take a quick drink here. Clear my throat. Okay, check this one out, folks. Like I say, I know this has been going on quite a while, but like I said, got a lot to cover, and this is quite revealing as well. So this is an article. Yeah, okay, there. I'm up on the side of the, okay, there. So this is an article of the Toronto Star. This one was produced May the 3rd by Alan Woods with the headline, "Why It May Matter That Russia is Calling Canadians Fighting in Ukraine Mercenaries." Officials say information gleaned from interrogations of more than 2,000 captured Ukrainian soldiers. Russia has launched a criminal investigation against 75 foreign mercenaries, including an undisclosed number of Canadians who are fighting in defense of Ukraine, the head of Russia's investigative committee says. Alexander Bastrikin, or whatever, who leads the National Criminal Investigation Agency, says the information about foreign fighters has been gleaned from interrogations of more than 2,000 captured Ukrainian soldiers, including 5 brigade commanders. These testimonies relate, among other things, to work with foreign instructors, as well as the participation of citizens in other countries as mercenaries. I'll just say Bastrikin told staff-funded broadcaster Russia Today in an interview published Tuesday. Based on available data, criminal cases have been initiated against 75 mercenaries who are participating in hostilities on the side of Ukraine. We know that they came from the UK, USA, Norway, Canada, and Georgia, and other countries. Calls to the investigative committee headquarters in Moscow were not answered. There's been no response to a request to the agency's press service for additional information. Bastrikin's use of the term mercenary appears to be both intentional and provocative, but legally incorrect in the present situation, says Chris Eklund, a Hamilton native who is in contact with Canadians currently in Ukraine. Now, here's why I believe, and why they believe, Russia's using the term. And actually, it does seem applicable, although I'm not a legal scholar in terms of international conflict. The Geneva Convention defines a mercenary as someone who fights on behalf of another country for money or material gain over and above what similarly ranked soldiers of that country are paid. Canadians going to fight in defense of Ukraine go as unpaid volunteers, Eklund said. So, try to find a little get out of jail free card there. But anyways, let's read this. So this was the part that I found most striking. Mercenaries have no legal status and are guaranteed no protections as prisoners of war under the humanitarian law, and can be charged if captured by an enemy force. Under Russian law, mercenaries can face up to 7 years in prison. Volunteer fighters, like regular armed forces, are guaranteed prisoner of war status and cannot be prosecuted for the participation in a conflict. So what that's telling me right now is, yeah, if Russia catches you over there, and apparently they've already caught some of them, that's not going to work out well for you. Why the hell Canadians want to go to a foreign country and get stuck in that quagmire once again, and possibly or potentially be fighting with the Nazis, right? That's like I say, I don't know. Other than people, like I say, there's some people that they just like conflict, war, right? Violence. They just love it. They live for it. Tell you the truth, it's not the worst thing in the world for the people that just love violence and war and yearn for it that desperately. If bad things happen to them, it's their own damn fault. And tell you the truth, I don't think the world's any worse off as a result, right? Maybe we're better off as a result. Who knows? Anyways, okay. They have no basis in law to be calling these people mercenaries because it simply does not pass the test. Well, I mean, that's your opinion. Russia has opinion, and well, I'm pretty sure Russia doesn't care about your opinion. In the Russia Today interview, Basterkin cited only one foreigner by name, a citizen of Georgia who allegedly created the Georgian National Legion, a volunteer unit, and recruited 24 other Georgian citizens to fight alongside him. Another volunteer fighting unit, the Norman Brigade, here it's coming again, this Norman Brigade, describes itself as a Western volunteer unit fighting for Ukraine and is believed to have a number of Canadian citizens in its ranks. On April 28th, a spokesperson for the militia of the Donetsk People's Republic, a breakaway region in eastern Ukraine, said a former Canadian lieutenant general may be among the estimated 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers and volunteer fighters holed up in underground bunkers at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol in southeastern Ukraine. So once again, folks, so now that we're hearing, right, and if you're aware of that standoff, right, and the propaganda, the stories that we've been hearing about that, and then civilians have been allowed to leave. Apparently, actually, latest thing I'm hearing so far is actually the children and the women have all been allowed to leave. So, and this is disturbing, like I say. So not only is this plant, right, being occupied by, thousands of these, Nazis, right? These far-right groups in Ukraine, but apparently there are even Canadians in that place, or potentially maybe Canadians in that place. So I'm just going to read that one more time here. On April 28th, a spokesperson for the militia of Donetsk People's Republic, a breakaway region in eastern Ukraine, said a former Canadian lieutenant general may be among the estimated 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers and volunteer fighters holed up in underground bunkers at the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol in southeastern Ukraine. Edward Buzarin, the spokesperson, provided no evidence to support his claim that retired Lieutenant General Trevor Cadeau was among what Russians say are as many as 400 foreign fighters trapped in the besieged factory complex. Cadeau was under investigation for sexual misconduct when he retired from the Canadian Armed Forces on April 5th, according to the Ottawa Citizen. After retiring, he reportedly traveled to Ukraine as a volunteer fighter. Last week, the investigative committee said it was also investigating the Canadian military training mission in Ukraine, which the agency said on its Telegram channel reportedly trained members of the Nazi Azov regiment as part of a training mission in Ukraine. The Azov battalion is a Ukrainian military regiment that has been accused of holding white supremacist and neo-Nazi views. It was formed in 2014 as a volunteer regiment and has since been integrated into the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said this week that the unit is now part of the Ukrainian National Guard and has shed its former extremist members and affiliations. Anyways, folks, don't worry. Nothing to worry about. The Nazis, they're all reformed. They're all born again, right? They're not even going to kill anymore. Oh, yeah, they are. That's right, too. They still... Anyways, folks, so that's pretty much, I think, actually, no, there is one more thing. One more thing before I let you go. Or, well, you can go at any time, but before I tie this stream up, another big thing. This is still, I'm still trying to get a grasp on this one, but I'll just give you my initial thoughts on it as soon as I pull it up here and read a little bit from it. But It seems like another piece of the puzzle is coming together for a way for these central planners, for the Trudeau government to be able to just target anyone and be able to have the political cover and now the legal jurisprudence, like I say, target anyone who challenges, the Trudeau regime or the establishment. Okay, yeah, you can see it there now. RCMP, this is a Globe and Mail article. RCMP laid terrorism charges against teen for alleged neo-Nazi ties in Canada's first, or Canadian first. Let me read that again, folks. Sorry. RCMP laid terrorism charges against teen for alleged neo-Nazi ties in Canadian first. So this is reported by Colin Freeze, May 6, 2022. The RCMP is charged in 19 with terrorism, alleging he participated in the activities of a neo-Nazi terrorist group. It is the first time Canada's anti-terrorism laws have been directly applied to such an organization, a legal expert says. Seth Bertrand, 19, filed an online application to join a terrorist entity, the Atomwaffen Division, also known as National Socialist Order, right? National Socialist, and offered his skills as commitment to the group, the RCMP said in a statement released on Friday. The Mounties also said Mr. Bertrand committed various hate-motivated offenses in the Windsor area between February and March of last year. Mr. Bertrand faces a charge of participation in a terrorist group, which carries a possible jail sentence of up to 10 years. Bobby Rousson, a Windsor lawyer who said he represents Mr. Bertrand, said he would not comment on the case. Police and prosecutors in Canada have been under pressure to pursue terrorism charges against white supremacists and hate groups since at least 2017, after a man shot and killed 6 people in a Quebec City mosque. The killer was convicted of murder but was never charged with terrorism offenses. Michael Nesbitt, a law professor at the University of Calgary, said in an interview that no one has been charged under the act with being a member of a neo-Nazi group until now. In a recent blog post, Mr. Nesbitt said his research shows that 59 of the 62 individuals charged under the act have been alleged to have been associated with or influenced by the terrorist group Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. But violent extremism takes many forms, Mr. Nesbitt said, adding that law enforcement officials need to show they can wield the anti-terrorism legislation against different kinds of threats. The law has to apply equally and has to be seen to apply equally, he said. Police and prosecutors must show the law has the capacity to deal with not just Al-Qaeda and ISIS, but whatever violent, hateful ideology exists. The Atomwaffen is part of a network of violent white supremacist organizations that urge their members to foment a race war with random strikes against members in minority communities. The federal government listed it as a terrorism group in February 2021, saying the organization calls for acts of violence against racial, religious, and ethnic groups and informants, police, and bureaucrats to prompt the collapse of society. According to court documents, Mr. Bertrand lives in Windsor. He was charged with several crimes there in early 2021, including trying to incite hate against an identifiable group. So I'm still trying to find the crimes. All I'm hearing of, he says some hateful things, right? But speech is not action, right? Speech is not a crime. And it's an extremely high bar to get to the point where you're trying to suggest speech is an actual crime. And we know how high that bar is, thanks to jurisprudence down in the United States. He faced mischief charges related to allegations that he vandalized a local transgender center and a home that flew a gay pride flag. Those charges have not been proven in court. Patrick Hennison, a researcher for the British organization Hope Not Hate, says his anti-hate group has infiltrated online white supremacist forums, and some of them teenagers from around the world as young as 15 are encouraging each other to target minority groups. Mr. Hermanson recently issued a report saying one such forum member bragged last year about vandalizing a transgender support center in Ontario and lately circulated pictures of the damage. So all I'm getting so far is vandalism. I mean, we've seen that take place. Spray paint, vandalism, that's a crime. But to be charged, to get to the point of charging a man with a terrorist offense, a young 19-year-old guy with a terrorist offense, you got to know that there's some political motivation involved in this particular witch hunt or prosecution, because there's lots of areas where if you want to find a way to charge people with an actual crime. But like I say, the first in Canada, and the fact that it's specifically towards this person, right? I don't know. Like I say, this is unfolding. Yeah, I still got a lot of time I still need some time to absorb, digest and really sit down and think about what this means. I'll probably have to read this article a few more times yet just to try to, but I mean, very disturbing. First time in Canada, folks. See, look at this. Earlier this week, the head of Canada's domestic spy agency said social media conspiracy theories and major disruptive events like the pandemic can accelerate the spread of hate. Threats are constantly evolving, fueled by extreme views around race, gender, power, and authority. See, there's a big difference between race, gender, and power and authority. See how they're tying all that in there? Said David Vignon, director of the Canadian Security and Intelligence Services. I'm telling you, these are the fucking Canadian version of Nazis. That's who these people are, which is why the Canadian government supports the Nazis, these groups over, I won't call them far right. That's what the label they want to use them. But these Nazis, these authoritarian collectivists, because that's what they really are. The reason why the Trudeau Liberals are supporting them and doing this shit is because they're just like them. I mean, look at what they're doing. They're targeting dissent. Now, this person, if he's done some stupid petty crimes or said some hateful things online, not cool with that, right? But I mean, come on. To invoke, to be the first time in Canada where you've charged, someone who you're labeling as a white nationalist or a racist or someone who's against the LGBT community. I mean, it's not hard to try to figure out where they're going with this, right? Anyways, that should, like I say, that should pretty much, Oh, actually, yeah. Parliament passed the Anti-Terrorism Act into law after the September 11, 2000 attacks in the United States. So, yeah, this goes way back. So, like I say, the laws were they already had this stuff on the books. They just waited for the opportune time to use them, right? And this is what big government does. This is what big government does. And, of course, now I'm going to cover this last portion of it, which is regarding euthanasia. Because, like I say, think about it. It looks like the Trudeau Liberals, one thing that's really big on the list for the Trudeau Liberals is it seems to be all of it. Wherever they go, death seems to follow them. Death, devastation, and destruction seem to follow Liberals basically everywhere they go these days. And this is a part, and I've been saying for a while, if you're a boomer, someone in the older generation, this should matter to you. You need to get your ass, and everything else about you out of the doldrums and start really think critically about what this means. Stop supporting these people just because they keep stroking your ego or pretending that they're on your side or they're there for you. Government's just there for you, huh? Well, like I say, if the last 2 years haven't proven otherwise, I mean, like I say, I said early on, and I'm just a nobody. All they had to do is worry about protecting the people in hospitals and long-term care facilities, the immunocompromised, the vulnerable. For the last 2 years, right early on, and I have it's all recorded, it's all archived, that I said right early on, that what you got to do is just protect the vulnerable. Well, what is the one area in this country that they failed massively? Like I say, they have no problem targeting people, a guy for walking across a park, kicking a soccer ball by himself, or someone sitting on a bench by themselves reading. We know about the fines and the targeting and all the shit that they did, the lockdowns, the mandates, the restrictions, all these impositions on us. But the one area that it's all government. That's what government does, right? Hospitals, long-term care, that's their wheelhouse. And that's the one area where they failed massively, right? Look at how many Canadians died being in these government-run institutions or government-regulated institutions and facilities, right? That's where most of the death actually took place. So do you really trust government, right? You really willing to place your hands or your life in the hands of government? Because even people in the UK are starting to recognize what's going on over there in Canada. You guys are gone nuts. Not all, some for sure. So this is The Spectator by Yuan Yi Zhu. Why is Canada euthanizing the poor? This is reported April 30th, 2022. There is an endlessly repeated witticism by the poet Anatole France that the law in its majestic equality, forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under bridges, to beg in the streets, and to steal bread. What France certainly did not foresee is that an entire country, and an ostentiously progressive one at that, has decided to take his sarcasm at face value and to its natural conclusion. Since last year, Canadian law, in all its majesty, has allowed both the rich as well as the poor to kill themselves if they are too poor to continue living with dignity. In fact, the ever generous Canadian state will even pay for their deaths. What it will not do is spend money to allow them to live instead of killing themselves. As with most slippery slopes, it all began with a strongly worded denial that it exists. In 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada reversed 22 years of its own jurisprudence by striking down the country's ban on assisted suicide as unconstitutional, blithely dismissing fears that the ruling would initiate a descent down a slippery slope into homicide against the vulnerable as founded on anecdotal examples. The next year, Parliament duly enacted legislation allowing euthanasia, but only for those who suffer from a terminal illness whose natural death was reasonably foreseeable. It only took 5 years for the proverbial slope to come into view when the Canadian Parliamentary enacted Bill C-7, a sweeping euthanasia law, which repealed the reasonable foreseeable requirement and the requirement that the condition should be terminal. Now, as long as someone is suffering from an illness or disability which cannot be relieved under conditions that you consider acceptable, they can take advantage of what is now known euphemistically as medically assistance in dying, MAID for short, for free. Yeah, if it's anything like MAD, yeah, watch out. Talk about targeting Canadians. Anyways, soon enough, Canadians from across the country discovered that although they would otherwise prefer to live, they were too poor to improve their conditions to a degree which was acceptable. Not coincidentally, Canada has some of the lowest social care spending of any industrialized country. Palliative care is only accessible to a minority, and waiting times in the public health care sector can be unbearable to the point where the same Supreme Court, which legalized euthanasia, declared those waiting times to be a violation of the right to life back in 2005. Like I say, if you're a boomer, and they're even getting to the point, we'll get to the point. Anyways, let me move on. Let me move on because there is one more. Yeah, okay, so this one here. And then this will be the last one, and then I'm going to be done. So this one? No, there's another one, sorry. It's a global one. Canadian Senate, global Canadian Senate. There we go. So here, so this is what's included too. And then, like I say, this is the last one, I do believe. Yeah. So this was actually reported on back in March 17, 2021. But now everything's been updated. But this was the article I found right away. But Canadian Senate passes Bill C-7. So this is a Global News article. Expanding assisted dying to include mental illness by Joan Bryden, the Canadian Press. Intolerably suffering Canadians who are not near the natural end of their lives now have the right to seek medical assistance in dying. And that will eventually include people suffering solely from grievous and irremediable mental illnesses. The expansion of Canada's assisted dying regime went into effect Wednesday night after the Senate accepted its revised version of Bill C-7. The bill received royal ascension. So anyways, we already know that went into effect. But basically what it is now is these updated versions, and apparently this is going to be the new normal, that even mentally healthy or people who considered to have a mental illness, right, will be included in this. So think about how far, and yeah, that'll be the last article. Think about how far that slippery slope has gone to the point where it was only people that they were going to die. They were basically in a vegetative state. There's no way of ever bringing them back, in comatose or whatever, right? It went from that to the point where now, yeah, if you're poor or you're having mental health issues, and like I say, think about all the people, think about all the baby boomers who are on prescription medications and have a long track record in history of using the excuse, the pretense, or a real thing that happened to them where they have these mental issues or depression or suffering from depression or severe anxiety or panic attacks, or think about all the things and the countless Canadians, like I say, the older Canadians, in particular the boomers, who are all on prescription drugs, right? And we know the boomers, we already know the economics suggests that big giant cohort, as more and more of them move into retirement ages and sucking up more and more of those very limited resources in this country, right? That the younger generations that are much, much smaller in comparison cannot sustain. And even the mass immigration doesn't seem to be able to sustain this big, gigantic, that boomer bulge that's moving on through. And like I say, getting to that last and final phase where they're going to get not just heavily relying on the healthcare system, but, pensions, especially those in the public sector. Think about all these people in the public sector who are retiring at 55 and have average lifespans now into the 90s. And some of them are like century, 100 years old, which means what, 45 years, almost another half of a century of paying out these ridiculously like gold-plated pension plans, right? I mean, how that can't happen? That's something that's going to give at some point in time. How does it give? I don't know. But maybe if a substantial portion of that cohort were deemed not worthy to live anymore, that would definitely have an outstretched effect on it. Once again, I hate to even bring this stuff up, but it's something that people need to really think about. Because if you're not thinking about it now, well, like I say, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Maybe you might not be in such a sound-minded body to be thinking about this proper, or might not be in a position to be able to push back against it, right? That's why, like I say, be in principle and take it your stance now. Don't wait another. I've been reporting on this kind of stuff, this craziness that governments have been doing for 10 years now. Don't wait another decade. Don't wait for people like myself to spend another fucking 10 years warning you about the kind of craziness that's taking place. Because once again, by the time it's too late, there's no help for a lot of you. There's no help for you. And I feel terrible. I actually have sympathy for you people because it's not looking good. The future's not looking good. And when you're getting to that later stage in your life, probably not going to be a good time to, have this kind of stuff imposed and thrust upon you. But anyways, like I say, I really appreciate all you folks who joined the stream. Like a lot, I know I took a while. There's a lot of information that I had to cover, but I think all of the information was important. And it was really something that I felt a need, a desire. I felt compelled that I have to get this information out. It's just like if I saw someone drowning, right? I couldn't help myself. Well, there are some things, right? But I can't. I'm that kind of person. Like, damn, there's something going. I got to try to help. Here, let me reach out my hand the best you can. Sadly, there's the crazy part about today is while I'm reaching out my hand to most Canadians, they're like, "No, go away, you asshole." Oh, okay, all right then. But I guess there's at least a few. Especially those of you who are in the chat. And thanks for all of you who did join the stream and stuck in around this long, because I know how long I can go on. And this was definitely a long stream. But anyways, like I say, really appreciate all you folks. I'm going to tie this live stream up because we are 2 hours and 58 minutes. I did a 3-hour session here, but as you know, lots of great information contained within it. And like I say, if you want to use this information to help people out, by all means, share it, spread it around, like it, subscribe, do all that thing to try to help counteract the suppression that I'm constantly and currently experiencing. So have a great rest of your day. Have a great week. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Happy Mother's Day. What a time to finally get around to mention this. But, of course, I did put it on all my other social media platforms. But happy Mother's Day to all the great mothers out there. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.